They say women are the weaker sex, more emotional, more fragile. But that statement, when examined under the harsh light of reality, collapses under its own weight. Because behind many soft voices and tear-filled eyes lies a steel core, silent, unshakable, and enduring. This is the emotional strength paradox, the contradiction of a woman being perceived as emotionally delicate, yet proving time and time again to be the emotional backbone of families, communities, and even entire societies. Think about it. From a young age, girls are told that emotions are a sign of weakness. Crying too much? You're being dramatic. Speaking your truth? Too sensitive. Society encourages emotional suppression in men, but punishes expression in women. Yet, in spite of that, or perhaps because of it, women grow up with a deep awareness of emotional landscapes. And that awareness, misunderstood as weakness, becomes their greatest strength. Consider the mother who loses her child, but still finds the strength to help others heal. The woman who endures years in a toxic relationship, not out of weakness, but for the sake of her children, holding together a fragile household with her bare hands and a heart that's breaking in silence. These aren't just characters from fiction. These are the real, everyday heroines you meet in grocery stores, hospitals, schools. Women who appear ordinary but carry invisible weights most could never bear. The paradox lies in how society misunderstands emotional expression. A woman may cry. She may fall to her knees when the world comes crashing down. But what you don't see is that moments later, she stands up again, wipes her tears, and keeps going. Not because she has no choice, but because she knows that strength is not the absence of emotion, it's surviving in spite of it. The tears are not signs of defeat. They are a pressure valve, a release, a reset, and then comes resilience. Take, for example, Malala Yousafzai. As a teenager, she was shot in the head by the Taliban for advocating girls' education. Most people, man or woman, would never recover from such trauma. But Malala didn't just recover. She became louder, braver, a global voice for justice. Her emotions, her fear, her grief, her passion were not obstacles. They were fuel. Emotional strength doesn't always come in the form of loud defiance. Sometimes it's found in the quiet decision to keep going. Or look at Rosa Parks. One simple no from a black woman on a bus ignited a firestorm of civil rights momentum. It wasn't physical strength that made her powerful. It was the emotional resilience, the unbreakable sense of dignity that refused to be crushed under decades of racism. Her strength was not loud. It was still, silent, and absolutely immovable. Even in everyday life, this paradox plays out. A single mother working 2 jobs, managing bills, school, and society's judgment, all while trying to preserve her child's joy. She isn't weak because she cries at night. She is a warrior in disguise. Her strength is measured in how many times she puts others before herself, how many nights she sacrifices sleep so her child can have food, how many dreams she pauses just to keep the family from breaking. Then there's the emotional labor women perform in relationships, often without recognition. They soothe the conflicts, remember the birthdays, sense when something is wrong before it's said. These invisible acts of love and intuition don't come from weakness. They are rooted in a deep, complex form of strength that few are taught to appreciate. But here's the twist. The paradox bites harder when women themselves start to internalize the belief that they are too emotional to lead, to make hard decisions, or to stand firm in negotiations. Society tells them they're strong for enduring pain quietly, but weak for standing up and expressing anger. It applauds sacrifice, but shames assertion. This contradiction breaks many women from the inside out. It creates guilt, confusion, and burnout, because they are asked to be strong, but never in ways that threaten comfort zones. This is where the emotional strength paradox becomes not just a psychological irony, but a social trap. To dismantle this paradox, we must first reframe our understanding of emotion itself. Emotions are not irrational, they are data. They tell us when something is wrong, when boundaries are crossed, when we need to act, rest, or fight. Women have, through generations of emotional tuning, developed an incredible sense of this inner data, and when it's harnessed, it becomes a compass, pointing toward justice, empathy, and leadership. You see, emotional strength isn't about avoiding the breakdown. It's about surviving it and growing from it. It's about crying and still leading. It's about being afraid and still fighting. It's about being underestimated and using that as fuel to go further, harder, deeper. And let's not forget the power of emotional connection. It's what allows women to build support systems that become unshakable, friendships where pain is shared and strength is multiplied, communities where healing becomes contagious. In a world that often silos pain, women find ways to turn suffering into solidarity. That, too, is emotional strength. So the next time someone tells you women are too emotional to lead, too fragile to face challenge, too soft to stand alone, remember, emotion isn't the opposite of strength. It's the foundation of it. The heart may ache, but it keeps beating. The mind may doubt, but it keeps choosing. The body may tremble, but it keeps standing. This isn't weakness. It is a paradox, and it is powerful. Because at the end of the day, emotional strength is not about being unbreakable. It's about being breakable and still choosing to rise. She sits there, eyes glistening, not with weakness, but with truth. A truth so raw, so unfiltered, that the room feels heavier just from her presence. Most people would look at her and assume she's breaking. But they're wrong. What they're seeing is not the collapse of a fragile spirit, it's the exact moment that spirit begins to fortify itself. This is the vulnerability paradox. The illusion that the more a woman reveals her softness, her fear, her pain, the weaker she becomes, when in reality, her very act of revealing, of opening up, of being seen in her most exposed state, is often the source of her greatest strength. This paradox plays out everywhere, in quiet therapy rooms, in family kitchens, on corporate stages, in war zones, in confessionals. A woman speaks her truth, trembling, uncertain, but still speaking. That act alone requires a bravery that most people never even attempt. Vulnerability is often perceived as an open wound, but what if it's actually the scar forming, the wound healing? Science supports this, even if culture hasn't caught up. Researchers have consistently found that people who allow themselves to be vulnerable, who don't suppress their emotions, experience greater long-term resilience. One study found that emotional openness helps regulate stress hormones more effectively than suppression. When a woman feels safe enough to say, "I'm scared," or "I'm not okay," she isn't falling apart. She's rebuilding her nervous system. She's rewiring her brain for balance. She's making space for authenticity to take root where fear once lived. Take the case of a woman named Elena, who fled an abusive relationship with nothing but her daughter and a backpack. For months, she told no one what she had endured. She kept up appearances, working, smiling, blending in. But it was killing her from the inside. Eventually, she broke down in front of a coworker, admitting everything. She expected judgment, pity. But instead, she received connection, solidarity, support. That one moment, one of the lowest in her life, became the turning point. That vulnerability didn't destroy her. It saved her. It built her a support network. It reminded her she was human, and that being human doesn't mean being perfect or invulnerable. It means being real. We've been trained, generation after generation, to see strength in stoicism, especially for women who have long been expected to hold families together, to keep a smile through the pain, to be both the caregivers and the emotional anchors of others. But the real emotional anchor is not the one who never sways. It's the one who allows herself to be seen when she's drowning. That kind of courage isn't glamorous. It doesn't come with applause. It often happens in the quiet, in solitude. A woman deciding, "Tonight, I will not pretend. Tonight, I will cry. Tonight, I will let this feeling come." Vulnerability is the opposite of control, and that's why it's terrifying. To admit pain is to risk rejection. To reveal love is to risk loss. To express fear is to risk being perceived as incapable. But what if the real risk lies in never letting ourselves be seen? What if the wall we put up to protect us is the very thing keeping us from being held, supported, and understood? In relationships, the paradox becomes even more visible. A woman who hides all her insecurities, her emotional scars, may be praised as low maintenance, strong, independent. But inside, she may be withering. And in contrast, a woman who says, "I need reassurance," or "I feel anxious when I'm ignored," might be labeled needy or sensitive. Yet, that same woman, by acknowledging her emotional truth, gives her partner the opportunity to truly see her. She fosters intimacy. She builds a relationship based on openness rather than performance. And yes, vulnerability has risks. There will be people who take advantage, people who mock, people who betray. But the solution is not to shut down. The solution is to learn discernment, to know who has earned your truth. Vulnerability doesn't mean full exposure to everyone. It means intentional openness. It means knowing that the right people will see your softness and respond with tenderness, not disdain. We also see this paradox in leadership. Women in positions of power often feel the pressure to suppress emotion, to be taken seriously in male-dominated spaces. But some of the most powerful female leaders in history, Jacinda Ardern, Malala Yousafzai, Michelle Obama, have leaned into vulnerability as a strength. They've cried publicly. They've shared personal stories of trauma and fear. And in doing so, they've not only connected more deeply with millions, they've redefined what strength looks like. Not cold, not untouchable, but warm, human, brave. Think of the single mother working 2 jobs, crying in her car before walking into her second shift. Think of the teenager admitting to a counselor that she's self-harming. Think of the widow who tells her child, "I don't know how to do this without your dad." None of these women are weak. They are, in fact, performing the most courageous act imaginable, showing up in their own truth, without guarantee of being met with understanding. In psychological terms, this is a reclaiming of agency. To allow vulnerability is to assert that your story matters, that you matter, even in your imperfection. It is an act of trust in yourself and in the world, a gamble that someone will meet you there. And often they do. So the next time you see a woman break down, don't look away. Don't see weakness. See courage. See years of unspoken burdens finally breathing air. See the first step toward healing. And if you're that woman, shaking, scared, unsure if revealing your truth will set you free or ruin everything, remember this. Vulnerability is not the end of the story. It's the beginning. Strength is not always steel. Sometimes it is silk. Sometimes it's a whisper instead of a roar. Sometimes it's found in the courage to say, "This is who I am. This is what I feel, and I will not hide." She lies awake at 2 a.m. staring at the ceiling, not because she wants to, because she can't help it. Her mind, a theater of past conversations, imagined futures, and microscopic analyses, plays on loop. Every word she said that day is dissected. Every silence is filled with imagined meanings. Every what if becomes a doorway into a dozen worst-case scenarios. And here's the paradox. She does all this thinking in the hope of finding peace. But instead, the thinking itself becomes the source of her unrest. This is the overthinking paradox. The idea that the mind, in trying to solve a problem, becomes the problem. That the very thing she uses to protect herself, her intellect, her reasoning, her ability to anticipate, turns against her when it doesn't know when to stop. And this isn't just random anxiety. This is deeply rooted in how women, especially, are raised and conditioned. From a young age, many girls are taught to anticipate others' emotions, to be accommodating, to avoid conflict. She learns to read between the lines, to detect shifts in tone, to worry if someone's mad, to assume responsibility even when things aren't her fault. Over time, this vigilance becomes second nature. It feels like intuition. But it's actually a survival mechanism, overthinking disguised as emotional intelligence. Take a simple example. A woman texts someone she cares about. No reply. 10 minutes pass, then 30, then 2 hours. Her mind doesn't sit still. It races. Did I say something wrong? Are they ignoring me? Are they hurt? Are they with someone else? These thoughts aren't chosen. They flood in. Because her brain is trying to fill the gap, create a narrative in the silence. She believes that if she thinks enough, she'll find relief. But the relief never comes, only more questions. And here lies the paradox. The brain believes overthinking is useful. It believes it's a form of preparation, of protection. But in truth, overthinking is a form of mental self-harm. It's a spiral, one that offers the illusion of control, but delivers only chaos. Let's take a real-life example. Priya, a 29-year-old marketing executive, finds herself constantly anxious before presentations. Not because she's unprepared, she's usually more prepared than anyone else, but because she replays imaginary criticisms in her mind. What if I forget a slide? What if they think I'm not smart enough? She practices late into the night, correcting imagined flaws, rehearsing every line. But the more she prepares, the more anxious she becomes. Not because the threat is real, but because overthinking feeds off itself. The more she tries to be perfect, the more her mind finds imperfections to fix. It's not just emotional exhaustion, there are physiological effects too. Overthinking activates the brain's stress circuits, keeping cortisol levels elevated. It disrupts sleep, digestion, focus. It shortens patience. It can even lead to decision paralysis, where choosing becomes impossible because every option has been analyzed to death. But here's the deeper layer. Overthinking is often a symptom of emotional intelligence turned inward. Women, especially those with high empathy, are more prone to overthinking because they sense so much. They notice details others miss. They pick up on subtle cues. This is a gift, but unregulated, it becomes a curse. The very same brain that can intuitively understand others can also torment itself with endless internal questioning. Relationships suffer most, because overthinking leads to misinterpretation. Silence is seen as anger. A short reply is read as rejection. A canceled plan becomes evidence of abandonment. And then begins the cycle: withdrawal, overanalysis, self-blame, all rooted in the belief that if she can just figure it out, she can prevent the pain. But sometimes there's nothing to figure out. Sometimes people are just tired, or busy, or human. But the overthinker struggles to let go of uncertainty. To her, uncertainty is danger. This is why the solution isn't to stop thinking. It's to learn when to stop. It's about recognizing that not every thought deserves a response, that not every feeling needs to be solved, that sometimes peace comes not from answers, but from acceptance. In one study, psychologists found that simply labeling thoughts, this is a fear, this is a doubt, this is not fact, reduced their power. It gave people space. It separated the thinker from the thought. And for overthinkers, especially women conditioned to internalize blame, that separation is life-saving. So, how do we break free? First, by understanding that overthinking isn't weakness, it's overfunctioning. It's the brain trying too hard to protect. It's an anxious attachment to control in a world that often gives none, and healing begins with compassion. Telling yourself, I'm doing this because I care too much, not because I'm broken. Then, slowly learning to sit with uncertainty, to breathe through silence. Journaling helps, meditation helps, therapy helps. But the real shift comes when she begins to trust herself more than her fears, when she can say, I don't know what will happen, but I will survive it. That's not recklessness, that's strength, that's freedom. The overthinking paradox is not just a mental loop. It's a mirror into how much she feels, how deeply she cares, how desperately she wants to get things right. But perfection is a moving target, and sometimes the bravest thing she can do is stop running. So if you're watching this and you find yourself spiraling, stuck in the loop of what ifs and why nots, ask yourself this: what if you didn't need to know right now? What if you let the silence be silent? What if your peace mattered more than your certainty? Because in the end, overthinking won't save you from pain. It will only rob you of peace. And you deserve peace. Not when you figured everything out, but right now, just as you are. She wants to be loved, truly and deeply, to feel someone's arms wrap around her not just in moments of comfort, but in everyday stillness. She craves connection, not because she's needy, but because she's human. Yet the more she wants it, the harder it becomes to hold on to. This is the heartbreak of the attachment paradox, the cruel contradiction where the deeper the emotional need for connection, the more likely it is to generate fear, anxiety, and even emotional distance. It starts subtly. In childhood, a young girl reaches for her caregiver. Sometimes they're warm, sometimes cold. She learns love is not consistent. It must be earned. She becomes hyper-aware of others' moods. She watches for signs. She becomes an expert in emotional climate. As she grows, this sensitivity doesn't leave. It evolves into attachment patterns. And that's where the paradox begins. When she finds someone she likes, she doesn't just like them. She attaches. And attachment feels like gravity. It pulls at her emotions. She needs reassurance, stability, closeness. But needing too much feels like a burden. So she hesitates. She pulls away. Then panics. Then chases again. It's a silent war between desire and fear. She fears abandonment, but clings too tightly. She wants space, but resents the distance. Her emotional compass is in conflict. This paradox shows up vividly in romantic relationships. Take Maya, for example, a 27-year-old woman in what looked like a healthy relationship. Her partner loved her, showed up, communicated, but inside her, it never felt enough. A 2-hour delay in text replies would leave her spiraling. He's losing interest, she'd think. He's pulling away. And so she'd react, question him, test him, withdraw herself. Not because she didn't care, but because she cared too much. The attachment felt unsafe. And here's the tragic irony. Her behavior, born from fear of losing love, often pushed love away. This is the paradox. The stronger the attachment need, the more anxious and reactive the person becomes. But those very reactions can destabilize the very relationship they want to protect. This isn't about weakness, it's about wiring. When someone grows up in environments where love was unpredictable, their nervous system never learns what safe attachment feels like. They become hypervigilant. Their brains scan for rejection, even when it's not there. It's not drama, it's trauma, it's biology. And it's not just the anxious. There's another side to this paradox, the avoidant. Some women have learned that attachment equals pain, so they do the opposite. They pull back, they numb, they keep things casual, but beneath the surface is the same need, to be loved without fear. Only now it's buried under layers of self-protection. The paradox is that they appear independent, but long for deep connection. They want love, but fear its cost. Even friendships are affected. A woman might feel deeply connected to a friend, but the moment the friend gets busy, she starts questioning the bond. Maybe I'm not important. Maybe she's replacing me. These thoughts are not logical. They're emotional echoes from the past, echoes of attachment wounds that never healed. This paradox leads to a life of emotional contradiction. She might say, I want someone who loves me deeply, but feels suffocated when someone tries. Or she may chase emotionally unavailable people because it mimics the inconsistency she knew growing up. Predictable love feels foreign, almost boring. She's addicted to emotional intensity, not stability. But here's the most haunting truth. The attachment paradox doesn't mean she's broken. It means she was shaped. And anything shaped can be reshaped. Healing begins when she realizes that her need for love is not wrong, but the way she seeks it might be built on outdated patterns. When she learns to sit with discomfort, to not react to every emotional wave, to understand that not every silence is abandonment, she begins to reclaim control. Therapy helps, yes, but so does self-awareness, mindfulness, the practice of noticing the trigger without becoming the trigger. She can start small. Delayed text. Instead of spiraling, she tells herself, I feel anxious. But this doesn't mean I'm unloved. She becomes the observer, not the prisoner. Over time, she learns what secure attachment feels like, not fireworks, not games, but consistency, communication, safety. She may even resist it at first. This feels too easy, she might think. But ease isn't emptiness, it's peace. And peace is what her nervous system has long been craving, even if it never knew how to ask for it. We must understand this. The attachment paradox isn't just a psychological curiosity. It's a daily emotional battle fought in silence by millions. The woman who pushes people away and cries when they leave. The girl who over-apologizes in relationships. The wife who needs constant validation. These aren't flaws. These are survival strategies, outdated, but once necessary. And if you've ever felt this deep desire to be loved, tangled in the fear of being too much, know this. You are not alone, and you are not too much. You are someone who loved before she felt safe, someone who gave before she was ready, and someone who, despite it all, still believes in connection. That is not weakness. That is resilience. In the end, the paradox doesn't disappear. It transforms. From anxious attachment to conscious connection, from fear-driven reactions to grounded responses, from craving validation to embodying self-worth. And when that shift happens, she doesn't stop needing love. She just stops needing to chase it, and that changes everything. They say the eyes are windows to the soul, but what if the window lies? What if the emotions we wear on our faces don't reflect what we feel inside, and the world reads us all wrong? This is the haunting truth behind the expression paradox. a real psychological and neurological phenomenon where facial expressions and emotional states get decoupled. Imagine smiling at someone during a moment of despair, not because you're happy, but because your brain has been conditioned or malfunctioned to express an emotion that doesn't belong. It's more common than you think, and it's far more chilling than it sounds. In the 1970s, psychologists began noticing something strange in war survivors and victims of long-term abuse. Some would recount horrific memories, tears welling in their eyes, yet their faces remained calm. Some even smiled, gently, eerily. This wasn't deception. It was involuntary. Their brains, overwhelmed with trauma, had rewired the pathways that linked emotion to expression. They weren't lying. They were broken. In one documented case, a woman named Elena survived a concentration camp. When interviewed decades later, she spoke of death, starvation, and losing her family, all while smiling faintly. It wasn't happiness. It was a deep, traumatic misfire. Neurologists discovered that parts of the limbic system, responsible for emotion, had been permanently disrupted. Her expression, her mask, wasn't a choice. It was a scar. The expression paradox challenges the most basic human skill: reading others. We rely heavily on facial cues to interpret emotions. A frown equals sadness. A smile equals joy. But the paradox exposes how fragile and misleading those cues can be. A man at a funeral might laugh. A child in terror might freeze into blankness. A mother burying her son might look composed, even peaceful. And inside, a storm of agony. You've likely witnessed this paradox without realizing. Think of celebrities who end their lives despite seeming cheerful in public. Robin Williams, for example, an icon of laughter, struggled with depression for years. His smile was real, but it wasn't always honest. It became armor. Over time, the body learns to protect itself with rehearsed expressions that shield the raw truth underneath. It gets even darker when we look at the science. The human brain has multiple pathways for facial expression. There's the voluntary path, from the motor cortex, that lets you smile for a photo. Then, there's the involuntary path, from the basal ganglia and limbic system, which reflects true emotion. In healthy individuals, these paths align. But in people suffering from trauma, neurological conditions like Parkinson's, schizophrenia, or even chronic depression, the paths break. The expression becomes disconnected from the emotion. A smile can be a scream. Consider patients with Mobius syndrome, a rare neurological disorder that paralyzes facial muscles. They feel emotions like anyone else: grief, joy, fear, but they cannot show it. Parents often report their children being misjudged as emotionless, cold, or detached, even though their hearts are full. They become prisoners behind a face that cannot speak. But the inverse is perhaps more disturbing. When people can express emotion, but it's false. Sociopaths, for instance, master facial mimicry. They can feign sadness, delight, empathy, all without feeling a shred of it. Their expressions are masks, crafted through observation, not emotion. It's a kind of weaponized version of the paradox, an emotional lie worn like a costume. It's not always pathological either. Think of the customer service worker smiling through verbal abuse, or the mother calming a child while her own life crumbles. We perform expressions to survive, but what does it cost the soul? A study by psychologist Paul Ekman showed that forced expressions can even induce emotion. When people were told to smile using certain muscles, their brains actually released serotonin, the happiness chemical. This gives rise to yet another layer of the paradox, where the expression creates the feeling instead of reflecting it. It raises uncomfortable questions. Are we in control of our emotions? Or do our faces dictate what we feel? Now, picture a courtroom. A grieving father testifies about the loss of his daughter, but his face remains blank. No tears, no tremble. The jury watches, unconvinced. They think, he must be hiding something. But what if he's just another victim of the expression paradox? What if he's collapsed so far inward that his body forgot how to show grief? Justice may hinge on facial cues, and yet, those cues may lie. Even AI facial recognition systems are being trained to analyze emotions based on expressions. But how do they account for the paradox? A machine sees a smile and assumes happiness, but it can't know the tears just beneath the surface. Neither can most people. This dissonance causes relationships to crumble. A partner might ask, "Why aren't you upset?" Or, "Why are you smiling right now?" Not realizing that trauma, neurological conditions, or even years of social conditioning can fracture the link between outer appearance and inner truth. We live in a world obsessed with optics, social media posts, selfies, polished expressions, but behind the filters and smiles, the truth remains tangled. How many times have you posted a happy photo while battling despair? How often have you told someone, "I'm fine," with a practiced grin? The expression paradox lives there, in those micro moments, making liars of us all. It's not weakness, it's human. And it's dangerous to ignore, because if we can't trust the face, what do we trust? Voice, tone, touch, or do we finally learn to ask rather than assume? To go beyond expressions and truly listen to someone's story? Because buried beneath the smiles and silence, there is often a truth screaming to be heard. That is the real terror and the real beauty of the expression paradox. Imagine pouring your heart and soul into someone else's survival. You give everything you have, sacrificing your time, your health, your very essence to make sure someone else is okay. And when it's finally your turn, when the roles should reverse, the world leaves you standing alone. No one is there to care for you. The caretaker is left uncared for. This is the heart-wrenching truth behind the caretaker paradox, a dilemma that arises when those who spend their lives caring for others are left to face their own needs in isolation. It's a paradox because it contradicts the very nature of caregiving, a relationship based on mutual support, love, and often selflessness. But in the end, the caretaker finds themselves stuck without the help they so willingly gave to others. The paradox isn't just a philosophical one, it's deeply personal, it's real, and it's experienced by millions of people who find themselves in a vicious cycle of giving without ever receiving. Caretakers, whether they're parents, nurses, or volunteers, often find their needs overlooked because they've become so entwined in the welfare of others that their own well-being fades into the background. Take, for instance, a mother who cares for a disabled child. She spends years juggling appointments, managing medications, and ensuring her child's safety and happiness. She does it out of love, out of duty, out of pure sacrifice. But when the child grows older and more independent, the mother is left standing with her own fading health and exhausted mind. The child, now able to take care of themselves, no longer needs the mother's care in the same way. But the mother has become so entrenched in giving that she has no one left to care for her. She becomes invisible. This is a silent epidemic, a societal failing. And it doesn't just affect parents of children with disabilities. It affects those who work in healthcare, in mental health, in caregiving professions. Every day there are nurses working double shifts, social workers staying late, volunteers tirelessly giving to causes that don't benefit them directly. But when it's their turn to need support, whether it's after a long illness, after burnout, or simply after a life of giving, they find the support system to be a mirage, a ghost that's disappeared. In fact, research shows that caregivers experience higher rates of depression, anxiety, and physical health issues than the general population. In the United States alone, there are over 40 million unpaid caregivers. They give, but they rarely take. And this imbalance can have devastating effects. It's a dangerous cycle that often goes unnoticed because society tends to view caretakers as being strong or selfless, as if those traits should automatically negate the need for their own care. We expect caretakers to endure, to be silent warriors in a world that demands endless sacrifice. The caretaker paradox also challenges our understanding of human relationships. It points to a fundamental flaw in how we view caregiving, as if it's a one-way street. We often glorify the selfless giving of care, but we forget that for caregiving to be truly fulfilling, it needs to be reciprocal. Healthy relationships, whether between family members, partners, or even society and the individuals it supports, require balance. When the balance tips too far, when one person is always the giver, it leads to burnout, resentment, and a sense of being emotionally and physically drained. Think about the healthcare workers who were celebrated as heroes during the pandemic. They worked tirelessly, often without proper rest or recognition. They saved lives, sometimes at the cost of their own health. But when the pandemic faded into memory, when the applause stopped, who was left to care for them? The system that asked them to give everything often failed to provide them with the support they needed. Some of them left the profession altogether, burned out and disillusioned. The paradox is not just a personal experience, it's a societal one. We build systems that depend on the sacrifice of the few for the benefit of the many. But when the few are exhausted, when their well-being falters, society often looks the other way. The question we must ask ourselves is, why do we expect caretakers to be unbreakable? Why do we forget that they are, at their core, human beings with their own needs, fears, and desires? Consider the elderly, who have spent their lives caring for others, parents, spouses, and community members, who did everything they could to ensure that their families were fed, nurtured, and protected. But when they reach old age, who is there to care for them? Often they are alone, left to fend for themselves, in a system that has moved on. The children they cared for have lives of their own, and the communities that once supported them have long since shifted focus. The caretaker has become the forgotten one, left behind in the shadows. There is, however, hope in understanding this paradox. The first step in breaking it is recognizing it for what it is. We must ask ourselves, how can we create systems where caretakers are cared for as well? How can we offer support to those who give so much of themselves? Whether through mental health resources, community support networks, or simply by fostering a culture of mutual care, the goal is to balance the scales. A society that values its caretakers will inevitably create a healthier, more compassionate world for everyone. For individuals caught in the paradox, there is also hope. Seeking support is not a sign of weakness. It's a reminder that self-care is just as important as caring for others. It's about recognizing that we, too, need time to heal, to recharge, and to be cared for. Caregiving is a cycle, one that must be reciprocal if it's to remain sustainable. The Caretaker Paradox isn't just a reality, it's a call to action. It asks us to rethink how we value care, how we offer support, and how we take care of those who take care of us. Because if we fail to care for the ones who care for others, we risk losing not just them, but the very compassion that binds us together as a society. Silence. It's one of the most powerful tools in human interaction, yet it often goes unnoticed, especially in the context of women's lives. For many women, silence is not simply an absence of sound. It is a language, a shield, and at times, a cry for help. It can signify comfort, but also loneliness. It can represent peace, but also pain. The silence paradox is not just about the quiet moments. It's about understanding the complexities of what women experience in those moments of stillness. In many relationships, when women fall silent, it is often misunderstood. Silence in women isn't always about being at peace or not having anything to say. It's more complex. It can be a defense mechanism, a way to avoid conflict or protect oneself from emotional overload. Women are often socialized to prioritize the needs of others, to speak when spoken to be soft, accommodating, and nurturing. This leads to the paradox of silence. It can be an act of submission, but also one of great personal strength. Imagine a woman in a toxic relationship, where words become weapons. Every argument is an emotional battle. Every discussion leaves her feeling drained. Over time, she begins to pull back into herself. Her silence isn't about lack of love or communication. It's a survival tactic. She has learned that silence keeps her safe from the verbal assaults, from the constant criticism that chips away at her self-esteem. And yet, her silence is often mistaken for indifference or disinterest. The paradox here is that her silence, while protecting her, is also keeping her from truly expressing her emotions and desires. She yearns to be heard, but her silence keeps her trapped in a cycle of emotional isolation. Women often face societal pressure to be the calm in the storm, the ones who hold everything together. From a young age, many girls are taught that their emotions should be kept in check, that their thoughts should be diplomatic, and their voices should be soft. This can lead to a form of self-censorship, where women hold back what they truly feel because they fear judgment or backlash. In the workplace, this manifests as women who smile through uncomfortable situations, nod through dismissive comments, and never raise their voices to call out unfair treatment. This silence, while seemingly polite, often prevents them from asserting themselves and claiming the space they deserve. The paradox? The more women remain silent to avoid conflict, the more they lose their power. But silence also has a more profound, almost sacred role in women's lives. For many women, silence is where they find themselves. It's in the quiet moments alone, away from the demands of family, work, and society, that they reconnect with their true selves. In these moments, they are free from the expectations placed on them by others. They can reflect on their goals, their passions, and their emotions. This form of silence is restorative. It is a space of healing and self-awareness. The paradox here is that silence, which often feels oppressive in social contexts, can be liberating in solitude. It gives women the space to listen to their own needs and desires, to remember who they are outside of the roles they are expected to play. But then, there is the silence of suffering. Women who have experienced trauma, abuse, or loss often carry the weight of their experiences in silence. They may feel that their pain is too much to bear, too personal to share. For many, talking about their suffering feels impossible. Their silence isn't an absence of emotion. It's the weight of emotion they don't have the words for. It is the silence of carrying pain so deep that even speaking about it seems like it would shatter them. And yet, in their silence, they are often overlooked, misunderstood, or even dismissed. The paradox here is that the more they suffer in silence, the harder it becomes to heal. But speaking out, opening up, seems like an impossible leap. For women who have experienced injustice, silence is often a response to oppression. Throughout history, women have been silenced in so many ways. From being denied the right to vote, to being ignored in professional spaces, to having their voices drowned out in their own homes, silence has been imposed on them. Yet, in the face of such systemic silencing, women have found ways to speak out. The silence becomes resistance, a refusal to conform to the norms that silence them. The paradox is that, while silence has been used to oppress, it has also been the quiet strength that has fueled many of the world's most powerful movements. Women's silence is not a passive absence. It is an act of defiance, a protest against the world's attempts to keep them voiceless. This paradox of silence also extends to the way women are conditioned to be silent in the face of their own needs. Think about how often women are expected to put others first, whether it's their children, their partners, their families, or their friends. Women are often expected to be the caregivers, the nurturers, the ones who constantly give without asking for anything in return. Over time, this conditioning leads to a silence of their own desires. Women may feel guilty for needing space, for asking for help, or for wanting something for themselves. Their silence becomes a form of self-denial, a refusal to take up space, a refusal to ask for what they truly need. The paradox is that the more women silence their own needs to please others, the more exhausted and drained they become, leaving them with even less to give. Yet, women's silence can also be incredibly empowering. When a woman decides not to respond to negativity, to rise above petty criticism, to choose not to engage in a toxic conversation, her silence is not weakness. It is strength. It is her way of saying, "I am not going to waste my energy on this." The paradox here is that the silence, which others may interpret as weakness, is actually an act of self-preservation and emotional intelligence. The more women learn to use silence strategically, the more they empower themselves. The silence paradox, especially in women's psychological experiences, is deeply complex. Silence can be a form of protection, a source of power, a cry for help, and a tool for self-care. It's often misunderstood, misinterpreted, and undervalued. But in reality, silence is a profound statement. It speaks more than words ever could. It holds the weight of unspoken emotions, of suppressed desires, of quiet rebellion. It's in the silence that women find their strength, their vulnerabilities, and their voice, all wrapped into one paradoxical experience. Silence, when understood, can be a powerful tool for self-expression, for healing, and for empowerment. The paradox of choice is a concept that has dominated psychological discussions for decades, yet it is something that often goes unnoticed in daily life. For women, the experience of choice is incredibly complex. On the one hand, they are often empowered by the freedom to make choices about their lives, careers, and relationships. But on the other hand, the very abundance of choices can create overwhelming pressure, doubt, and confusion. The choice paradox for women is not simply about making decisions. It's about the emotional, societal, and psychological weight that comes with those decisions. At first glance, choice seems like a luxury. In a world that prizes autonomy and individualism, having the ability to choose is seen as a sign of freedom, and in many ways, it is. Women, particularly in modern times, are no longer confined to the narrow roles that were once prescribed to them. They can choose their careers, their partners, their education, and even their identities. This freedom should feel liberating, but for many women, it is anything but. Instead, the overwhelming number of choices can create anxiety, indecision, and self-doubt. The paradox lies in this. The more choices women have, the harder it becomes to make a decision. Consider a woman standing at a career crossroads. She has the ability to choose her professional path. Perhaps she's weighing options between a high-powered job that demands long hours or a role that offers more flexibility but is less prestigious. Each path offers its own set of rewards, but it also comes with its own set of sacrifices. The more options she has, the more she becomes paralyzed by the fear of making the wrong choice. What if she chooses the wrong career and regrets it later? What if the job she turns down would have been the key to her happiness? The paradox here is that the greater the number of choices, the less confident women often feel in their decisions. The idea of having it all becomes a double-edged sword, where the pursuit of the ideal life leads to a feeling of constant uncertainty. This paradox extends far beyond careers. In relationships, for example, women are bombarded with societal expectations about what the ideal partnership looks like. They are told that they can have love, independence, success, and happiness all at once. But this idealized version of relationships often leaves little room for the messy realities of human connection. Women are faced with choices. Should they settle for a partner who doesn't quite meet their needs but who offers security? Or should they risk being single to hold out for a relationship that truly fulfills them? The pressure to choose the right partner, combined with societal expectations about marriage, family, and happiness, can feel suffocating. The paradox is that while women have more freedom to choose their relationships, the expectations surrounding those choices often lead to deep dissatisfaction and confusion. Then, there's the paradox of choice and personal identity. Women today are told that they can reinvent themselves however they wish. They can choose their appearance, their career, their lifestyle, and even their beliefs. But the very idea of a constantly shifting identity can lead to confusion and anxiety. What if the version of themselves they choose to be isn't the right one? What if they become too focused on trying to fit into society's ever-changing standards? The more freedom women have to choose their identity, the more pressure they often feel to get it right. They may experience a deep sense of inadequacy if they cannot live up to the idealized version of themselves that society promotes. The paradox here is that women, in having the choice to shape their identities, often feel lost in the process of figuring out who they are. Moreover, there is the burden of choice when it comes to motherhood. For many women, deciding whether to have children is one of the most important decisions of their lives. Yet, the options and opinions available to them can feel like a heavy weight. On one hand, they are told that they should have children if they want to experience the full joys of life. On the other, they are told that they should be cautious, consider their career first, and make sure they are ready for the responsibility. There is the constant pull between personal desires, professional ambitions, and societal pressures. The paradox is that while women can choose whether or not to have children, the weight of that decision often comes with deep uncertainty and regret. Should they have children now or wait? Should they focus on their career or their family? In the end, many women are left wondering whether their choice was the right one, constantly questioning the path they've taken. The choice paradox for women is deeply influenced by the pressures they face from society. There is the constant fear of judgment, of choosing the wrong partner, the wrong career, the wrong life path. This fear is amplified by the expectations placed on women to have it all. Be a successful career woman, an attentive mother, a perfect partner, and an independent individual. The sheer number of choices, combined with societal pressure to succeed in all areas, creates an unbearable tension. The paradox here is that the more women are given the freedom to make choices, the more they may feel overwhelmed and unfulfilled. The greater the freedom to choose, the more paralyzing the fear of making the wrong choice becomes. This paradox doesn't only affect women's big life decisions. It affects the everyday choices they make. Take something as simple as shopping. The options available in a grocery store or online marketplace can be overwhelming. Women are constantly faced with an array of choices, from food products to beauty items, each promising to improve their lives in some way. This endless barrage of options can lead to decision fatigue, a psychological phenomenon where too many choices lead to confusion and dissatisfaction. The paradox here is that, in an age of abundance, women often feel dissatisfied and exhausted by their ability to choose. It's as if the more options there are, the less satisfied they are with the decision they ultimately make. So, what is the solution to the choice paradox? In many ways, it's about embracing the uncertainty that comes with choice. It's about recognizing that no choice is ever entirely free of risk or doubt. Women need to learn to trust themselves more, to accept that not every decision will be perfect, and that's okay. Instead of trying to get it right all the time, the key is to make choices that align with their values, their instincts, and their deepest desires. By doing so, they can free themselves from the constant anxiety that accompanies decision-making and embrace the beauty of living with the choices they've made. The choice paradox is not just about the number of decisions women face. It's about the emotional and psychological burden of those decisions. It's about the freedom to choose and the heavy weight that comes with it. The paradox lies in the fact that, while women have more freedom than ever before, they are often left feeling unsure, unfulfilled, and overwhelmed by the very choices they are given. Understanding this paradox is the first step in learning to navigate the maze of choices, to make decisions with confidence, and to embrace the freedom that comes with choosing one's own path. Confidence is often considered a cornerstone of success. It is the trait that many people, especially women, are told they must cultivate to excel in life, to assert themselves in relationships, in careers, and in their personal identity. But the reality of confidence is far more complicated than a simple belief in oneself. The confidence paradox is this: the more women are told to be confident, the more difficult it becomes for them to feel truly confident. The very pressure to be confident often undermines their ability to experience that confidence authentically. On one hand, society tells women that confidence is the key to unlocking their potential. The more confident they are, the more they will achieve. They'll be seen as leaders in their careers, as assertive in their relationships, and as role models to others. Confidence is associated with power, success, and happiness. But on the other hand, the very notion of confidence, especially the expectation to exude it at all times, can create an immense amount of self-doubt and insecurity. The paradox here is that the more women are expected to be confident, the more they feel inadequate when they don't meet those expectations. Consider the workplace, where confidence is often seen as an essential ingredient for advancement. Women are told that if they want to rise in their careers, they need to speak up, take risks, and assert their opinions. Confidence is equated with authority. Yet, in practice, this expectation often leads to anxiety. Women frequently struggle with imposter syndrome, the feeling that they don't truly belong or deserve their success. Even when they are successful, they may constantly question whether they're capable or if they simply got lucky. The more they are encouraged to project confidence, the more they fear being exposed as a fraud. The paradox is that women who appear outwardly confident may often feel deeply insecure on the inside. But this paradox doesn't end in the professional world. In relationships, women are often encouraged to show confidence in love, to be sure of themselves and their choices. Yet, the very act of trying to appear confident can make them feel emotionally vulnerable. When women are expected to be confident, they often suppress their doubts, their fears, and their insecurities. This leads to a disconnect between their authentic selves and the confident persona they project. The paradox is that in striving to be confident, women may lose touch with the deeper, more nuanced aspects of their emotional lives, which can lead to feelings of isolation and disconnection. The confidence paradox also manifests in personal identity. Society promotes an idealized image of the confident woman, one who is self-assured, decisive, and unshaken by the opinions of others. Women are encouraged to embrace this image and to present themselves as confident at all times. However, this pressure can cause women to deny their true selves. They may feel that expressing vulnerability or uncertainty will be seen as weakness. The more they try to live up to society's standard of confidence, the more disconnected they may feel from their authentic identity. The paradox is that in trying to cultivate the outward appearance of confidence, women may struggle with internal conflict, torn between societal expectations and their true emotional experience. This paradox extends to social media, where the portrayal of confidence is often linked to carefully curated images of success, beauty, and happiness. Women are constantly exposed to images of seemingly perfect lives, and the pressure to measure up can be overwhelming. Social media encourages women to present themselves as confident, even when they may be struggling with self-doubt or insecurity. The paradox here is that while social media promotes the idea of effortless confidence, it often creates a distorted reality, one in which women feel compelled to present a confident image that doesn't reflect their true experiences. The more they try to conform to these standards, the less confident they may feel in their own skin. The confidence paradox also plays out in the realm of self-care. Women are encouraged to take care of themselves, to prioritize their needs, and to embrace their worth. Confidence is often framed as an internal belief in one's value. However, this too can create pressure. If women are constantly told that confidence is something they should feel naturally, it can lead to frustration when they don't experience it as easily as they are expected to. The paradox is that confidence becomes something women strive for, rather than something they experience authentically. The more they push to feel confident, the more elusive it becomes. Consider the example of a woman standing in front of the mirror, trying on clothes. She's told that she should feel confident in her body, but she feels anything but. The clothes may not fit the way she wants them to, or she may not feel that she measures up to society's beauty standards. The expectation to feel confident can become paralyzing. The paradox is that the more women are told they should feel confident in their bodies, the more they may internalize criticism, feeling like they have failed in some way. The act of trying to be confident becomes an exhausting, never-ending cycle of self-monitoring and self-criticism. The confidence paradox also has a deep psychological effect on women's sense of self-worth. Confidence is often seen as the ultimate indicator of value. But what happens when a woman feels unconfident? In a society that values confidence above all else, a lack of confidence can feel like a personal failing. Women may internalize these feelings of inadequacy, believing that their worth is tied directly to their ability to exude confidence. The paradox is that the more society demands confidence from women, the more their self-worth becomes contingent on that very trait. Women may find themselves trapped in a cycle of trying to perform confidence rather than cultivating it as an authentic part of themselves. The ultimate challenge of the confidence paradox is that confidence is a deeply personal, fluid experience. It isn't something that can be molded into a one-size-fits-all ideal. Confidence isn't about perfection, and it isn't about projecting an image of self-assuredness at all times. True confidence comes from embracing one's vulnerabilities, acknowledging one's weaknesses, and having the courage to show up authentically. The paradox is that in trying to fit into society's narrow idea of what confidence should look like, women often miss out on the deeper, more meaningful experience of truly accepting themselves, flaws and all. To break free from the confidence paradox, women must learn to redefine what confidence means. It's not about never feeling self-doubt or insecurity. It's about accepting those feelings as part of the human experience and not letting them define their worth. Confidence is not something to be performed. It's something to be cultivated through self-compassion, self-acceptance, and self-awareness. It's about being honest with oneself and embracing the complexity of the human experience. The paradox is that when women let go of the need to constantly be confident, they often find that they become more truly confident in the process. Multitasking is often celebrated as one of the greatest skills one can have in today's fast-paced world. It's seen as the ability to juggle multiple tasks at once, to efficiently manage work, home life, and personal responsibilities. But there's a paradox within this. The more we're encouraged to multitask, the less effectively we actually accomplish everything we set out to do. This is especially true for women, who are often expected to juggle a multitude of roles, caregivers, professionals, partners, and more, without sacrificing any one of them. The multitasking paradox is this: the more tasks women try to handle at once, the more likely they are to experience burnout, decrease in quality of work, and feel a sense of constant failure. Think about the way women are expected to balance their professional lives with personal responsibilities. In the workplace, women are often praised for being able to juggle multiple projects simultaneously. They're expected to meet deadlines, attend meetings, respond to emails, all while maintaining their productivity levels. Meanwhile, at home, many women are expected to manage household chores, care for children, maintain relationships, and nurture their personal well-being. This idea of being able to do everything at once is not only encouraged, it's almost demanded by society. However, the paradox is that while society promotes the ability to multitask, science shows that it's actually a skill that humans aren't naturally good at. Studies have demonstrated that when we multitask, we divide our attention, leading to lower efficiency and more mistakes. The act of switching between tasks actually reduces our ability to focus on any one thing. Now, think about a woman's typical day. She might wake up early to get her children ready for school, get herself dressed for work, make breakfast, and start her professional tasks, all before 9 a.m. Throughout the day, she's expected to juggle meetings, respond to urgent emails, make family plans, and keep track of countless other responsibilities. There's always something else to do, something she has to remember, something she has to finish. But as she switches between these different tasks, her brain struggles to keep up. Every time she shifts focus, it takes time for her brain to readjust. This constant switching between tasks, even if it feels like productivity, actually causes cognitive fatigue and reduces performance in every area. But there's a deeper layer to the multitasking paradox. While society pushes women to multitask, it also subtly judges them when they fail to maintain the illusion of having it all together. If a woman falls short, whether it's in her career or personal life, there's often a sense of guilt, as if she's somehow failing to live up to an impossible standard. When a woman fails to juggle everything perfectly, she might feel like she's letting down her family, her coworkers, or even herself. This judgmental lens isn't just external, it often becomes internalized. Women begin to judge themselves for not being able to handle it all, pushing them to overwork, to overcompensate, and to feel even more pressure to multitask in order to appear successful. Take the example of a woman trying to manage both her career and family life. She might work a demanding job, and in the evening return home to care for her children and manage household responsibilities. As she cooks dinner while checking emails or making work calls, she might feel like she's being productive. But the reality is that while she's doing multiple things at once, her attention is spread thin, and none of the tasks are being completed at their highest level of quality. The paradox is that by trying to be everywhere and do everything, she ends up being less effective at each individual task. Multitasking feels like an achievement in the moment, but it's actually a trap. The more she tries to handle everything at once, the more overwhelmed and exhausted she feels. And when the inevitable mistakes or oversights happen, the guilt sets in, reinforcing the pressure to do even more. The multitasking paradox also plays a role in mental health. Constantly shifting between tasks leads to cognitive overload, which can contribute to stress, anxiety, and eventually burnout. It's a cycle that many women fall into, thinking they must continue doing more and more to meet expectations. They wear themselves out trying to be the perfect worker, the perfect mother, the perfect partner, all at the same time. But this constant juggling acts as a silent thief of their mental well-being. It steals their energy, their joy, and often their sense of accomplishment. The paradox is that while multitasking seems like a way to accomplish more, it ultimately leads to an overwhelming feeling of being spread too thin, leaving little time or energy for rest, recovery, or self-care. Even when a woman seems to be managing her many roles with grace, there's often an unseen cost. Take the example of a woman who seems to have it all together at work. She's putting in long hours, responding to emails late into the night, and maintaining a high level of professionalism. Meanwhile, at home, she's raising children, maintaining her household, and supporting her partner. On the surface, everything looks fine. But beneath the surface, she might be experiencing emotional exhaustion, feeling disconnected from herself, and wondering if she's sacrificing her own happiness for the sake of everyone else. The multitasking paradox is that the very act of trying to meet external expectations often comes at the cost of internal peace. She is expected to balance it all, but in doing so, she loses touch with the quiet, reflective moments that allow her to recharge and truly reconnect with herself. The paradox also extends to the concept of success. Women are told that if they can manage to balance work and family, if they can keep all their plates spinning at once, they are succeeding. Yet the truth is that this ideal is unsustainable. No one can truly multitask forever without consequences. Over time, burnout takes its toll, not just on physical health, but on emotional well-being as well. Women who push themselves to the brink in the name of multitasking may eventually face a crisis, a moment where the constant demands of life catch up with them, leaving them exhausted and questioning whether it was all worth it. To break free from the multitasking paradox, women must learn to embrace the reality that they cannot do everything at once. Instead of juggling tasks and trying to meet impossible expectations, they must prioritize and focus on one thing at a time. By shifting their mindset from multitasking to single tasking, they can reclaim their energy, their focus, and their well-being. The paradox is that the more women try to do everything at once, the less they can truly accomplish. But by allowing themselves the grace to do one thing at a time, they can achieve more without the constant pressure to do everything perfectly. The key to navigating the multitasking paradox is acceptance. Accepting that it's okay not to be perfect. Accepting that it's okay to not handle everything at once. And accepting that rest is not a luxury, but a necessity. By shifting away from the need to constantly prove themselves as multitaskers, women can create a life that's more fulfilling, more sustainable, and more balanced. In doing so, they can unlock a deeper sense of productivity and peace without the paradox. Memory is one of the most fascinating and complex aspects of the human mind. It shapes who we are, how we view the world, and how we navigate our lives. We tend to think of memory as a reliable, almost flawless system, something that helps us retain experiences, emotions, and lessons from our past. However, there's a paradox within memory. The more we try to remember something, the more distorted and unreliable it can become. Our memories, despite being essential to our identity, are not always accurate or trustworthy. In fact, they are often shaped by our emotions, our current state of mind, and even external influences, which leads to a complex interplay between reality and perception. For women, this paradox is especially pronounced. Society places immense value on women's ability to remember, organize, and juggle information. From remembering appointments, birthdays, and household chores, to recalling details of past conversations or events, women are often expected to retain an immense amount of information. But what happens when memory fails, or when it becomes distorted? How do we reconcile the idea of memory as a reliable resource with the reality that it can be faulty, selective, and shaped by our perceptions? Think about how we hold on to memories of important events. Whether it's a cherished moment from childhood or a traumatic experience, memories are often intertwined with emotions. These emotions can sometimes cloud the clarity of the memory, creating a distorted version of what actually happened. We may remember a moment as being filled with joy, when in reality it might have been tinged with sadness or confusion. Similarly, we may recall a painful event as being more dramatic or intense than it truly was, as our mind amplifies the emotional components of the memory. This is the memory paradox. The more we try to capture a memory or make sense of it, the more subjective and unreliable it becomes. Let's take a deeper look at how this paradox manifests. A woman may have vivid memories of a difficult breakup, recalling every word exchanged, every tear shed, every moment of pain. But the more she replays this memory, the more the emotional weight of the experience influences how she remembers it. Over time, the memory may shift, exaggerating certain details. There's also a societal aspect to the memory paradox that specifically affects women. Society often encourages women to remember everything, every detail, every conversation, every date, especially when it comes to relationships or family matters. Women are often expected to be the keepers of memory, remembering anniversaries, birthdays, and family milestones. But when women's memories of these events are questioned, whether by others or by themselves, it can create a sense of doubt and insecurity. The paradox is that the more women are expected to remember, the more pressure they feel to get it right. This pressure to have perfect recollections can create anxiety, which in turn can distort their memories even further. In relationships, this paradox often comes into play. A woman may recall an argument with her partner in vivid detail, but when the partner remembers it differently, a sense of confusion and frustration can arise. The paradox is that each person's memory of the same event can be radically different, shaped by their own perspectives, emotions, and biases. What one person remembers as an insignificant comment, Another may remember as a deeply hurtful remark. The more these memories are discussed, the more they can become entangled, further distorting the original truth of the event. The key to navigating the memory paradox lies in understanding its fluidity. Memory is not a fixed entity. It is constantly changing, influenced by both our emotions and the passage of time. While we cannot always trust our memories to be perfectly accurate, we can learn to embrace them for what they are, imperfect, yet essential to our sense of self. By accepting that our memories will never be flawless, we can release the pressure to hold on to them perfectly. Instead, we can focus on the essence of what those memories represent, the feelings, the lessons, and the meaning they carry, even if the details are clouded by time. Ultimately, the memory paradox teaches us that memory is a living thing. It grows, evolves, and shifts with us, just as we do. Rather than seeing it as a static reflection of our past, we must accept that memory is dynamic, changing as we change, and often revealing more about who we are in the present than who we were in the past. At the core of human experience lies a complex tension between two seemingly opposing forces, logic and emotion. These two forces are fundamental to how we navigate the world, make decisions, and interact with others. Logic is the process of reasoning. It's methodical, clear, and driven by facts and evidence. Emotion, on the other hand, is intuitive, visceral, and deeply tied to our feelings. We tend to think of these as separate entities, as though they function independently. But in reality, the relationship between logic and emotion is anything but straightforward. It's a paradox, one that often leads us to make decisions that seem irrational or contradictory. The logic-emotion paradox is the idea that we are constantly torn between these two forces. Logic tells us to make decisions based on reason, facts, and the predictable consequences of our actions. Emotion, however, urges us to act based on our feelings, instincts, and the inner drive to protect or nurture ourselves and others. The paradox emerges when these two forces collide, when logic and emotion push us in opposite directions, leaving us to navigate the tension between them. For many women, this paradox is an everyday reality. Society often expects women to be emotionally attuned, to nurture, to empathize, and to respond to the emotional needs of others. At the same time, women are expected to be logical and make decisions based on reason. But these two expectations don't always align. In fact, they often conflict, creating inner turmoil and frustration. Women are frequently placed in situations where they must choose between acting with their heart or with their head. And more often than not, both paths seem equally valid, leaving them to wonder which is the right one. Think about the moment of making a difficult decision. Maybe it's a choice about a career opportunity, a relationship, or even how to handle a personal conflict. On one hand, logic might guide you to make a decision that's practical, rational, and aligned with your long-term goals. You can weigh the pros and cons, think about the consequences, and arrive at a conclusion that makes sense in the grand scheme of things. But then, there's emotion, the voice inside that tells you to follow your heart, to consider your feelings, and to make a choice that feels right in the moment, even if it defies logic. This paradox can be seen in relationships. A woman might find herself in a relationship that, on paper, is not healthy or practical. Logically, she knows it's a toxic relationship, one that is filled with red flags and clear signs that she should walk away. But emotionally, she feels a deep attachment. The connection, the love, or perhaps the fear of being alone pulls her in the opposite direction. This tug-of-war between logic and emotion can lead to confusion, self-doubt, and sometimes a prolonged stay in a situation that isn't in her best interest. The paradox here is that even though logic may give her a clear path, emotion clouds her judgment, making it harder to see the truth or make the right decision. The logic-emotion paradox also plays out in decision-making at work or in life goals. Women are often encouraged to make choices that are calculated and logical, considering their future success and stability. However, emotions like passion, ambition, and intuition can also be powerful driving forces. In many cases, the logical decision may be to stay in a job or a situation that offers financial security or status. But the emotional side of a woman might push her to seek fulfillment or purpose, even if it means taking a risk or stepping into the unknown. It's a constant balancing act between maintaining security and pursuing what truly excites her. But the paradox deepens when we consider how logic and emotion interact in ways we don't always recognize. For example, when someone is emotionally invested in a goal or a relationship, their logical thinking often becomes impaired. This is particularly evident in high-stress or emotionally charged situations. A woman might be emotionally overwhelmed, whether by personal challenges, family issues, or societal pressures, and in those moments, logic may be hard to access. She might act impulsively or irrationally, not because she doesn't understand the consequences, but because her emotions override her logical thinking. In these moments, logic can feel distant, as though it's unavailable or irrelevant. What's even more interesting is how emotions can sometimes fuel logical decisions in unexpected ways. Imagine a woman facing a significant challenge, one that requires her to make a difficult logical choice. Emotion, in this case, can actually enhance her ability to think clearly. The emotional drive to protect her family, to secure a better future, or to pursue a dream can give her the strength to follow through on a decision that requires logical steps. In this way, emotion and logic don't always act in opposition. But let's not forget that logic itself can be influenced by emotion. Even when a decision seems based purely on facts and evidence, emotion can play a subtle role in shaping the outcome. For example, a woman might make a logical choice based on what she believes is the most beneficial for her future, say, choosing a stable career path. But her emotional attachment to the idea of security or her fear of failure may play a significant part in her decision-making process. This means that even the most rational choices can be deeply rooted in emotional responses. Logic and emotion are not as separate as we might think. They are intertwined in ways that are often invisible, and the decisions we make are frequently the result of both forces, whether we recognize it or not. The logic-emotion paradox also speaks to the broader human experience. Every person, whether a woman or man, faces this struggle between heart and head, between feeling and reasoning. It's a paradox that highlights the complexity of our decision-making processes, the inner conflict that defines so much of our existence. Sometimes, the struggle between logic and emotion leads to profound growth. It forces us to confront who we are, what we want, and how we see the world. And in those moments of tension, when we feel pulled in different directions, there's an opportunity to find a deeper truth, a truth that goes beyond the limits of logic and emotion, a truth that is uniquely our own. Ultimately, the logic-emotion paradox is a reminder that we are not simply logical beings, nor are we purely emotional creatures. We are a delicate balance of both. Our decisions are never entirely based on reason or entirely driven by feelings. They are shaped by the interplay between these forces, and in that space of tension, we find the essence of who we are. The bad boy paradox is a psychological phenomenon that has fascinated people for centuries. It's something we see not only in fiction, but also in real life. The allure of the bad boy, the rebellious, the unpredictable, the one who doesn't follow the rules. There's something undeniably magnetic about a bad boy, something that draws people in, especially women. This paradox, though, isn't just about attraction. It's about the complexity of human emotions, desires, and the deep-seated contradictions that shape our choices. It's a paradox because, despite the many red flags, the warnings, and the logical consequences, women often find themselves drawn to the very type of man who seems least likely to offer them safety, stability, or long-term happiness. At the heart of the bad boy paradox lies the clash between desire and practicality. The bad boy is often seen as the epitome of excitement, freedom, and defiance. He's someone who lives life on his own terms, who isn't afraid to break the rules, to challenge authority, and to do things his own way. There's a certain thrill in this kind of unpredictability. Something about the bad boy suggests that life with him will never be boring. For many women, this sense of adventure is irresistible. They feel the promise of intensity, passion, and perhaps even a sense of danger that makes them feel alive in ways they might not experience in more conventional relationships. But here lies the paradox. The bad boy is, in many ways, the exact opposite of what women are told they should want in a partner. He's often unreliable, emotionally distant, and even disrespectful. He may not be the one who listens, who understands, or who is there when needed. In fact, he's often the one who causes chaos, creates emotional turmoil, and leaves a trail of heartbreak in his wake. And yet, despite all of these red flags, women often find themselves irresistibly drawn to him, even when they know, on some level, that he is not the right choice. One of the most fascinating aspects of the bad boy paradox is the emotional roller coaster that comes with being involved with him. Women who are attracted to bad boys often experience a kind of emotional whiplash. One minute, he's charming, spontaneous, and full of energy. The next, he's aloof, distant, or even reckless. This unpredictable behavior can create a kind of emotional tension that paradoxically feels exhilarating. The highs are high, but the lows are often incredibly painful. And yet, for many women, the intensity of the experience can be addictive. It's as though the thrill of the bad boy's unpredictability feeds an emotional need that is hard to ignore. But what drives this attraction? It's not as simple as a desire for chaos or drama. For many women, the attraction to the bad boy is tied to deeper psychological needs. Some women may be drawn to the idea of saving the bad boy, of helping him become a better person, of being the one who can unlock his hidden potential. This desire to fix him is a powerful force, one that can overshadow logic and reason. The bad boy, after all, often presents himself as someone who is misunderstood, someone who needs love and care to become the person he could be. For some women, the challenge of winning his affection and trust becomes the ultimate goal. There's also a sense of power that comes with being the one who can tame the bad boy. It's not about controlling him, but rather about proving to oneself that they can break through his defenses, that they can make him care, and perhaps even change him. This dynamic can create an illusion of control, even though the bad boy is often the one who holds the power in the relationship. It's a paradoxical situation. The more the woman invests emotionally in him, the more she risks losing herself in the process. Yet, the idea of conquering him can be deeply fulfilling. The bad boy paradox also plays into deeper societal and cultural narratives. Women are often conditioned to look for partners who offer stability, security, and reliability. The good boy, the responsible one, is typically seen as the one who can provide these qualities, but the bad boy challenges that narrative. He represents something outside the norm, something wild and untamed. In a world that often values order and predictability, the bad boy represents freedom, independence, and a kind of unrestrained masculinity. He offers something that, for many women, feels like an escape from the monotony of everyday life. The paradox is that the very qualities that make him a bad choice, his unreliability, his impulsiveness, and his emotional distance, are the same qualities that make him so captivating. And then there's the role of fantasy. The bad boy is often a figure who embodies a sense of danger and excitement that many women fantasize about but might never fully embrace in real life. He represents the idea of living outside the boundaries, of experiencing something beyond the ordinary. The emotional intensity he brings is intoxicating, and the fantasy of being with someone who lives without limits can be irresistible. But the paradox is that the real-life consequences of being with a bad boy often don't match the fantasy. The emotional toll, the heartbreak, and the instability that come with the relationship can be far from the excitement imagined. At the same time, the bad boy paradox is not just about romantic relationships. It plays out in other areas of life as well. For example, many women find themselves drawn to rebellious figures in other contexts, whether it's the anti-hero in literature and film, or the unconventional leader who challenges the status quo. The bad boy represents a break from the norms, a challenge to the system, and a refusal to conform. This can be an incredibly appealing trait, especially for women who feel constrained by societal expectations. The paradox, however, is that while these figures may represent freedom, they often do so at the cost of their own stability, happiness, and peace of mind. In the end, the bad boy paradox speaks to the complexity of human desires and relationships. It's a paradox because, on some level, women know that the bad boy may not be the right choice. They recognize the emotional risks, the heartbreak, and the instability that often come with being involved with him. But despite this, they find themselves drawn to him, caught in the web of attraction, excitement, and fantasy. The bad boy represents something that is both thrilling and dangerous. And in this tension, we find the heart of the paradox. It's not just about choosing the right partner. It's about navigating the intense pull between desire and reason, between passion and practicality, and between the allure of the forbidden and the wisdom of experience. The nice guy paradox is a fascinating and complex phenomenon that, like the bad boy paradox, plays with the intricate nature of attraction, relationships, and human psychology. On the surface, the nice guy is everything anyone could want in a partner. He's kind, thoughtful, considerate, and selfless. He listens, supports, and puts the needs of others before his own. He is often emotionally available, responsible, and respectful. And yet, despite all these qualities, the nice guy often finds himself overlooked, unappreciated, and struggling to form meaningful romantic connections. So, what's happening here? Why is it that in many cases, women aren't drawn to the nice guy in the way we might expect? The nice guy paradox lies in the tension between expectation and reality. Society, movies, and fairy tales often condition us to believe that the perfect partner is someone who embodies all of these nice qualities, the one who is caring, compassionate, and emotionally supportive. The nice guy is supposed to be the ultimate prize. After all, if someone is kind and considerate, surely they should be the one everyone wants to be with, right? But the paradox emerges when we consider the reality of human attraction. You might think that being nice would automatically win someone's heart, but in many cases, the nice guy finds himself in a frustrating position. He might do everything right. He might be there for her when she needs support. He might listen attentively, offer his time, and put in the effort. But he doesn't seem to get the emotional reciprocation he desires. Often the nice guy watches as the women he cares about fall for the bad boy, or the rebel, or the emotionally unavailable type, the very opposite of what he represents. And this leads to a painful truth. Despite all his good qualities, the nice guy often finds himself in the friend zone, stuck in a cycle of unrequited love and frustration. So, why does this happen? The nice guy paradox, like the bad boy paradox, is rooted in deeper psychological and emotional dynamics. One factor is the concept of emotional attraction and desire. The nice guy often brings stability and predictability to the table, but in a romantic context, this can sometimes be perceived as boring or safe. It's easy to understand why. Emotional attraction is often driven by excitement, mystery, and unpredictability, things that the nice guy, in his steadiness, might lack. Women are wired to seek out partners who can create passion, challenge them, and make them feel emotionally alive. But the nice guy, because he is so stable and reliable, doesn't always provide the spark of excitement that many people subconsciously crave. Another component of the nice guy paradox is the issue of self-esteem and boundaries. Nice guys are often raised to believe that being nice and selfless is the best way to earn love and respect. They internalize the idea that if they are just good enough, they will be loved in return. However, this expectation can sometimes lead to a sense of entitlement. The nice guy may feel that because he has been kind and generous, he deserves the affection and attention of the woman he's interested in. When this affection isn't reciprocated, it creates feelings of resentment and frustration. The paradox here is that the nice guy, in his quest to be nice, can sometimes lose sight of his own needs and boundaries, and may even allow himself to be taken advantage of. On the other hand, some nice guys may fall into the trap of what we call nice guy syndrome. This is when a person is outwardly pleasant and self-sacrificing, but internally they have hidden motives. The idea is that they're nice with the expectation of receiving something in return, particularly love or validation. The problem with this mindset is that it's manipulative, even if it's unconscious. The nice guy may feel like he is owed something because of his behavior, and when he doesn't receive the affection he believes he deserves, he feels frustrated or betrayed. The paradox here is that another reason the nice guy often faces rejection is tied to the concept of attraction and desire in women. Research has shown that people are often drawn to partners who exhibit traits associated with confidence, independence, and assertiveness. The nice guy, while certainly a good person, often doesn't display the kind of boldness or self-assuredness that some women are subconsciously looking for in a romantic partner. This doesn't mean the nice guy is inferior, far from it, but it does highlight the role that confidence and self-esteem play in romantic attraction. Women, like men, tend to be attracted to partners who are not only kind, but also self-reliant and emotionally independent. The nice guy, who often relies on others for validation and approval, might not come across as the strong, assertive individual that some women find magnetic. And then there's the issue of emotional challenge. Many people, when asked about their ideal partner, will say they want someone who challenges them, someone who pushes them to grow, to think critically, and to step out of their comfort zone. The nice guy, by virtue of his caring and agreeable nature, can sometimes be seen as someone who doesn't challenge a woman in these ways. His predictability, while comforting, might not stimulate the emotional depth and complexity that fosters romantic attraction. He doesn't spark the kind of tension or emotional roller coaster that people sometimes crave, and this absence of emotional conflict can make the relationship feel less exciting, even if it's deeply fulfilling in other ways. In contrast, the bad boy, or the distant, mysterious type, often brings with him a sense of challenge and unpredictability. He may not be emotionally available, and he may not be offering the stability and support that the nice guy does, but he presents an emotional puzzle that the nice guy simply doesn't. There's a magnetic pull to someone who is hard to figure out, whose intentions and feelings seem uncertain. The contrast between this mystery and the steadiness of the nice guy can create an emotional tug-of-war in the heart of someone who is unsure of what they want. So, what does this mean for the nice guy? It doesn't mean that being kind, considerate, and emotionally available is wrong. In fact, these are incredibly important traits for long-term relationships, and many women do desire them. The key, though, is in finding balance. The nice guy paradox teaches us that attraction isn't just about being good, it's about being confident in who you are, setting healthy boundaries, and being emotionally self-sufficient. It's about not trying to earn love through self-sacrifice or waiting for approval, but understanding that love is built on mutual respect, emotional depth, and authenticity. In the end, the nice guy paradox is a reflection of the complexities of human desire, attraction, and relationship dynamics. It shows us that being nice is not enough on its own. It's the combination of kindness, confidence, self-respect, and emotional maturity that creates the kind of attraction that can lead to deep, meaningful connections. She wants love. She dreams of it, fantasizes about it, yearns for that deep, all-consuming connection where someone truly sees her, every scar, every secret, every vulnerability, and chooses her anyway. She wants to give herself fully, to melt into someone's soul, to feel the magnetic pull of belonging. And yet, when that love finally arrives, when it stares her in the eyes and reaches for her hand, something inside her hesitates, pulls away, builds walls. This is the love-fear paradox, a psychological contradiction where the very thing a woman most craves, deep, vulnerable love, is also the thing she unconsciously fears the most. This paradox doesn't live on the surface. It doesn't appear during flirtation, attraction, or even in the early sparks of a connection. It shows up when love begins to deepen, when consistency replaces chaos, when emotional safety becomes real, not just desired. Because with that safety comes a terrifying realization. Now, she has something to lose. Many women grow up with stories that say love is unpredictable, love is pain, love is betrayal. Whether through witnessing broken relationships, experiencing abandonment, or surviving emotional neglect, they've internalized a belief that love, while beautiful, is dangerous. Not because love itself harms, but because opening to love requires total emotional exposure, and exposure makes you breakable. This fear often doesn't speak loudly. It whispers. It creeps in subtly, wearing the disguise of logic. She might say, "He's too good to be true," or "I'm just not ready," or "I need space to find myself." But often, what she really means is, "I'm terrified. Because if I let this love all the way in and it disappears, I won't survive it." Here's the tragedy. When she's with someone unavailable, someone who only gives her love in crumbs, she feels heartbreak, but not devastation. The emotional risk is lower because she never truly let him in. But when love is real, consistent, vulnerable, and present, the emotional investment is total. And with that comes the haunting possibility of being emotionally obliterated. So she distances. She self-sabotages. Not because she doesn't love, but because the weight of being loved fully is almost too much to carry. This paradox is intensified by independence. Many modern women have fought hard for emotional autonomy. They've built strong lives, careers, identities. They've told themselves they don't need anyone, that love should complement them, not complete them. And while this empowerment is beautiful, it sometimes breeds another layer of fear. What if love makes her lose herself? What if merging with another soul means dissolving the hard-earned identity she's fought to build? So, she becomes cautious, hypervigilant. She scans for red flags even where there are none. She overthinks. She doubts her feelings. She questions the sincerity of someone who loves her purely, not because he's done anything wrong, but because pure love feels like unfamiliar territory. And the mind resists what it doesn't know, even when the heart longs for it. Let's go deeper. There's a neurochemical element too. In the presence of true love, the brain releases oxytocin, dopamine, and serotonin. These chemicals induce bonding, trust, peace. But for someone who has experienced trauma or abandonment, this calmness can feel unnerving. Her nervous system is used to chaos, to proving her worth, to surviving emotional ups and downs. So when someone makes her feel safe without demanding she earn it, her subconscious panics. It screams, "This is too quiet. Something must be wrong," and she runs. Not away from him, but away from the emotional stillness that her body interprets as danger. This is why many women feel more chemistry with emotionally unavailable men. Because they stimulate the nervous system. They trigger the familiar chase. They activate the need to prove, to earn, to fix. That's not love, it's anxiety. But anxiety feels like passion when love has never been peaceful. So when a man comes along who doesn't trigger her trauma, who makes her feel calm instead of chaotic, she doesn't recognize that as love. She might even call it boring, when in truth, it's the healthiest thing she's ever experienced. The love-fear paradox explains why some women leave relationships with men who adore them, why they sometimes sabotage the very thing they've prayed for, why they pick fights when things feel too good. It's not because they're confused, it's because deep love requires surrender. And surrender is terrifying when your heart has been trained to build walls. But here's the deeper truth. The only way through this paradox is to stop fighting it and face it. Healing begins when a woman realizes that fear doesn't mean love is wrong. Fear means love is real, because only real love has the power to destroy you. Only real love demands you lay your soul bare. But if she can sit with that fear, hold it, name it, breathe through it, she begins to see that love and fear can coexist. That bravery isn't the absence of fear, but moving forward despite it. She learns that loving doesn't mean losing herself. It means expanding herself. That vulnerability isn't weakness, it's the most radical form of strength. That being chosen without masks, without performance, is not suspicious, it's sacred. And most importantly, she begins to trust her own worth. Not the fleeting kind that depends on external validation, but the kind that says, even if this love ends, I will not shatter, because I am whole. The love-fear paradox is not a flaw in the feminine psyche. It is the deepest evidence of how deeply women are wired to protect their hearts. But the heart wasn't made for protection. It was made for connection. And at some point, the fear of staying closed off must become greater than the fear of being hurt. Only then does love finally win. She spent years building herself. Not just a career or a reputation, but a self. A woman forged in silence and resilience. She learned to hold her own hand in the dark, to speak softly to herself when no one else did. She became strong not because she wanted to prove anything, but because for most of her life, she had no other choice. And when love came knocking, offering something soft and safe and sacred, she stood at the door, paralyzed. Because this is the independence paradox in love. The deeper a woman values her independence, the harder it is for her to surrender into love, especially when that love is real. She was taught, explicitly or silently, that needing someone is weakness, that to rely on a man, to let him in past her armor, was to undo years of work, years of growth. So now, even when love feels right, when it's healthy and respectful and true, there's a haunting fear. If I let him in, will I lose myself? This paradox doesn't mean she doesn't want love. She does. In the quiet corners of her mind, she dreams of being seen, held, known deeply. But the fear whispers, if I soften, will I disappear? If I lean, will I collapse? She equates dependence with submission, and that scares her more than loneliness. We don't often talk about the cost of female independence in emotional terms. We celebrate it, and we should. But we ignore the hidden grief, the internal wars waged silently in the hearts of strong women. the grief of wanting to be taken care of while being terrified of what it would mean. The war between wanting to rest in someone's arms and feeling like doing so is a betrayal of self. Imagine a woman who has fought her way through life. Maybe she survived heartbreaks that broke her into pieces. Maybe she built a business or left an abusive relationship or raised children alone. Her independence isn't a trend, it's her armor. Now, picture a man entering her life, not to control her, but to love her deeply, to take things off her plate, to support her emotionally, to let her finally exhale. And instead of joy, she feels panic, because no one ever taught her how to receive. She's been so used to being the giver, the nurturer, the planner, the fixer, that surrender feels like death, even when that surrender is safe, even when it's exactly what she needs. The independence paradox becomes more complex when love starts to feel too close. She might pull back, create distance, pick fights, not because she wants to leave, but because her nervous system interprets closeness as danger. She fears being swallowed by love, losing her autonomy, becoming a version of herself she fought hard to evolve from. She fears needing someone who might leave, depending on someone who might fail her. And so, she wears independence like a shield, even in the arms of someone who only wants to hold her. This isn't about arrogance, it's about survival. Love, to her, feels risky, because love demands vulnerability. It requires letting go of control. And for a woman who equated control with safety, this is terrifying. She fears that if she lets someone in too deep, she will forget how to stand alone, and that, if the love ends, she won't survive the fall. But here's the truth beneath the paradox. Real love does not erase independence, it honors it. A strong woman doesn't lose her power in love, she learns a deeper power, the ability to trust, the bravery to receive, the courage to rest in someone's arms without losing the weight of her own identity. She begins to realize that there is a difference between dependency and interdependence. Dependency is losing yourself in someone else. Interdependence is choosing to share yourself with someone without giving up who you are. And it's in that space, between independence and intimacy, that real love thrives. He doesn't want to control her. He's not intimidated by her strength. In fact, it's what drew him to her in the first place. But he also wants to be needed, not in a desperate, unhealthy way, but in the quiet, sacred way that says, I trust you enough to lean. The strongest women are not the ones who never need anyone. They're the ones who can look love in the face, feel the fear of surrender, and still choose to say, I'm letting you in. That is true courage. And over time, she learns that love is not the enemy of independence. It is its companion. That needing someone is not the same as losing yourself. That resting in love does not mean retreating from strength. It means expanding into a new kind of strength, one that holds space for softness, for connection, for shared burdens. The independence paradox doesn't disappear overnight, but with the right partner, with love that respects, not restricts, it slowly begins to dissolve. She starts to breathe deeper, speak softer, love wider, and in the quietest moments, she whispers to herself, I can be strong and still let him hold me. She's not weak. She's not small. She's not someone who grew up dreaming of being dominated. She has a mind of her own. A voice, clear and sharp, honed by years of being misunderstood, dismissed, overlooked. And yet, in the depths of her heart, when she allows herself to admit it, there's a yearning to submit. Not out of fear, not out of duty, but from something far more complicated, far more paradoxical. This is the submission paradox. The deep internal conflict where a strong, independent woman desires to surrender, emotionally, sexually, spiritually, to a man she fully trusts, but is terrified that doing so will destroy the very identity she fought to build. She's not the submissive type, and yet she craves it in a way that makes her question everything. She has let herself for so long, stood alone in boardrooms and bedrooms alike, raised herself through fire, fought for her voice, and demanded her space in a world that tried to minimize her. And now, when she thinks about handing over even a little control, she feels like she's betraying all of that. And yet, she wants it. Not to be controlled, but to feel safe enough to let go. She wants to be able to collapse into someone's arms at the end of the day without explaining why. To not always be the one making decisions. To be told, not in aggression, but in grounded masculine presence, I've got this. To hear a voice that silences the chaos in her mind, not with force, but with calm certainty. But the moment she feels that desire rise in her, she shames herself. Because society told her submission is a betrayal of her feminism. Because experience taught her that submission has often meant sacrifice, of boundaries, of self-worth, of voice. Because she knows that too many men mistake submission for control, and too many women mistake submission for weakness. But real submission, the kind that whispers instead of screams, is not about weakness. It's about trust. About choosing to let go when you know you're safe. It is not the opposite of power. It is power in transformation. She doesn't want to be owned. She wants to be met. Not tamed, but seen. She wants to surrender, not because she can't lead, but because she's tired of always having to. And the truth that few dare to admit is this. Submission, when it's conscious and chosen, is not weakness. It's the bravest thing she could do. It says, I trust you with the most guarded parts of me. I trust you to hold me, not hurt me. I trust that if I hand you my heart, you won't use it as a weapon. This paradox runs deeper in the moments of intimacy. She may be the leader in the world, but in the dark, with someone she truly respects, she may want to give up control, to be led, explored, opened emotionally and physically. But her trauma might interrupt it. Her independence might resist it. Her mind might whisper, this isn't who you are. And yet, in her body, in her breath, in her bones, it is. She wants to be ravished, not violated, held, not restrained, guided, not dictated. There's a difference, and it's everything. But she also fears that if she shows this side, the world will not understand her, that she'll be judged, misunderstood, even by other women, that the man she submits to will not be strong enough to honor the depth of what she's offering. Because when a woman submits, truly submits, she's not giving up control. She's offering her vulnerability as a gift, and if he mishandles it, she may never offer it again. So she remains in this paradox, craving surrender, but fearing its consequences, desiring to melt, but unsure if anyone is worthy of the fire it took to make her solid in the first place. And yet, there is hope. There are men who understand the weight of that surrender, who do not see submission as conquest, but as communion, who do not need to diminish her to lead her, who lead because they are grounded, not greedy. Men who understand that power is not taken, it is offered, and it is sacred. With the right man, submission doesn't feel like sacrifice, it feels like safety. With the right man, letting go doesn't feel like weakness. It feels like finally breathing after holding your breath for too long. With the right man, she doesn't lose herself. She finds a version of herself she didn't even know existed, softer, freer, and still, just as powerful. The submission paradox is not about women being less. It's about them being more connected to their emotional truth, more attuned to what they crave, more willing to rewrite the narrative that strength and surrender cannot coexist. Because true strength is knowing when to let go. And the deepest form of love is knowing how to hold what someone else has spent a lifetime protecting. She tells the truth, but not always. Not because she wants to lie, but because she has learned that honesty, especially emotional honesty, often comes with a cost that not everyone sees or understands. You ask her how she feels, and she smiles. You assume she's fine. But deep down, she's carrying storms she can't name, wars she never signed up to fight. She wants to speak. God, she wants to scream sometimes. But a voice inside tells her, be careful, don't scare them, don't burden them, don't be too much. This is the emotional honesty paradox, the silent war where a woman longs to express her truest feelings but feels forced to hide them. Not because she lacks self-awareness, but because she's too aware of others, of consequences, of the ways people recoil from truth when it's wrapped in vulnerability. From a young age, she was taught that emotions are messy, inconvenient, or even dangerous. Crying in public made her weak. Anger made her hysterical. Expressing sadness made people uncomfortable. And love, real, raw, desperate love, made her needy. So, she learned to regulate, filter, soften. She learned to say, I'm fine, when her chest was tight with grief. She learned to nod and smile when she wanted to scream. She became fluent in emotional disguise. Yet, beneath the polished calm, her truth never left. It just sat, untouched, unseen, heavy. And every time someone told her, "You can tell me anything," part of her wanted to believe it. Part of her wanted to pour out everything. Her fears, her disappointments, the way she cries quietly at night so no one knows. But experience taught her differently. People often ask for honesty, but only the kind they can handle, the kind that doesn't challenge their comfort. So when she dared to be emotionally honest, to say, "I feel lost," or "I'm scared," or "I need you," she saw the shift, the silence, the withdrawal, the subtle way someone's eyes dim when your truth is too heavy. She doesn't fear honesty itself. She fears the aftermath, the awkwardness, the distance, the judgment, or worse, being labeled too emotional. So she holds back. Not always, but often enough that it eats away at her. She posts something vague instead of speaking directly. She cries in private instead of reaching out. She tells a half-truth instead of the whole story. Not because she wants to deceive, but because she doesn't want to scare someone away. Imagine a woman who's been strong for too long. She carries everyone else's weight. She listens, advises, comforts. She's the anchor in everyone's storm. But who is her anchor? When she finally says, "I'm drowning," and someone replies, "You'll be fine," that moment slices deeper than silence. That response teaches her something dangerous, that her truth is too much. And so, the paradox grows. She wants to be real, desperately, but fears what will happen if she is. Will he stay if he sees all of her? Will her friends withdraw if she admits she's not okay? Will her strength be questioned? Will her image of having it all together crack? Because for many women, being honest means risking abandonment. She remembers moments when she was brutally honest. When she said to someone, "I'm scared you'll leave," or "I feel like I'm not enough," or "I don't know how to be okay right now." And instead of receiving warmth, she got silence, or worse, rejection. That teaches you something. It teaches you to lie, to smile, to pretend. But pretending is a slow death. She starts to forget who she really is. She rehearses emotions instead of feeling them. She crafts texts, deletes them, writes again, then decides to say nothing. Not because she has nothing to say, but because she has too much, and she's tired of being misunderstood. The cruel twist of the emotional honesty paradox is this. The more a woman hides her truth, the more the world believes she doesn't have any. The more she acts okay, the less likely anyone is to ask if she really is. And eventually, people stop checking in. They assume she's always fine, and she learns to survive on emotional starvation, giving everyone else what they need, but never receiving what she desperately craves, to be seen, heard, felt. She wants a space, a person, where she can collapse, where she can say, "I'm not strong today," and not be fixed, just held, where she can admit, "I feel like I'm failing," and not be judged, just supported, where her emotional honesty isn't a burden, but a bridge, not a threat, but an invitation to deeper connection. There are men who say they want emotional women until they meet one, until she says something that makes them uncomfortable, until she expresses a depth that reflects their own emotional immaturity. Then suddenly she's dramatic or too intense. So she shrinks. She waters herself down. Not because she wants to, but because every time she blooms in honesty, someone tells her she should be smaller. And yet, despite it all, she keeps trying. Because emotional honesty, she is beautiful, and yet she's misunderstood. She walks into a room and eyes follow her. Not because they know her, but because they think they do. Her face becomes a canvas for other people's assumptions, their projections, their fantasies. But no one stops to ask who she really is behind that face, behind the perfection they think they see. This is the beauty paradox, the haunting contradiction where a woman's physical beauty grants her admiration, but often robs her of true understanding. She is complimented every day, but rarely listened to. People notice her lips, but not the words they speak. They admire her eyes, but never ask what they've seen. The world tells her she's lucky. That beauty is a gift, that it opens doors. And it does, doors to attention, to assumptions, to expectations, but not always to connection, not to truth. Sometimes, her beauty is the very thing that isolates her. She's been told she's intimidating, not because of her behavior, but because of how she looks. Some people assume she must be arrogant. Others think she's playing hard to get. Some believe she must be shallow, self-absorbed, unkind, because how could someone that beautiful also be deep, empathetic, struggling? People think beauty means ease, that her life must be effortless, that people fall in love with her instantly, give her everything, that she's never had to try. But they don't see the nights she's cried in silence, not because she wasn't loved, but because she was never truly known. They don't see how exhausting it is to be admired for something she never chose, something that changes, that fades, that people envy or desire, but rarely respect. There is a loneliness in being seen only for the surface, in being wanted for your body, but not your soul, in being praised for your skin, but never for your strength. She's had partners who said, "You're too pretty to be insecure," as if beauty was immunity to self-doubt, as if her reflection was a shield against rejection, betrayal, or heartbreak. But beauty doesn't protect her from pain. In some ways, it invites it. She's been objectified in rooms that called themselves professional. She's been talked over, dismissed, reduced to decoration. She's been stared at like property, not a person. She's had to work twice as hard to prove she's intelligent, competent, serious, because her looks made people assume she wasn't. Sometimes she wishes she could blend in. Not forever. Just long enough to be heard before being judged. Long enough to speak without her appearance becoming the first topic of conversation. She doesn't want to be unpretty. She just wants to be more than pretty. The paradox cuts even deeper when other women judge her too. Not for who she is, but for the way men react to her. She's been hated for attention she never asked for. Shamed for compliments she didn't want. She's been excluded, whispered about, labeled trouble or competition, when all she wanted was friendship, connection, belonging. And so, she learns to minimize herself, to dress down, to stay quiet, to act less than, so others don't feel threatened. She downplays her opinions to avoid being called a know-it-all. She hides her emotions to avoid being called dramatic. She laughs off disrespect to avoid being called sensitive. And yet, when she tries to show her real self, her fears, her dreams, her pain, people are shocked. Because beauty makes people assume that she's immune to real life, that her heartbreaks hurt less, that she's never been abandoned, that her smile means she's okay. She is not okay. Not always. She's human. She has depths you can't see from the surface. She has scars under the makeup, doubts behind the confidence, silence beneath the compliments. She wonders if she'll ever be loved, not because of her beauty, but in spite of it. She fears that the more beautiful people think she is, the less they try to understand her. That the prettier she appears, the more invisible she feels. That they fall in love with a picture, not a person. That they fall for her face but ignore her voice. And sometimes, in moments she can't admit to anyone, she wonders, if I weren't beautiful, would they still stay? If I lost this face, this body, this glow, would anyone still find me worth knowing? Or would they disappear like light when the sun sets? But she also knows, deep down, that her value was never in her beauty, that her beauty is not just her skin, her shape, her hair. It's in the way she feels the world so deeply. It's in her empathy, her fire, her intuition. It's in the way she can be both fierce and tender, in the way she holds others when they cry, even when no one holds her. She wants to be seen, not just looked at. She wants to be known, not just praised. She wants to be loved in the moments she's messy, tired, bare, not just when she's glowing, because beauty is not her identity, it's just her introduction. This is the beauty paradox, that what draws people to her is often the very thing that keeps them from seeing who she really is. And yet, she continues to rise, to reclaim her voice, to demand to be more than an image, because she is not a fantasy. She is not a trophy. She is not a mirror for someone else's admiration. She is real. She is complex. And the most beautiful thing about her is everything you cannot see. She has a dream, a purpose, a fire burning inside her, but the world keeps handing her a measuring stick and asking her to choose career or family, ambition or nurturing, independence or belonging. This is the career paradox, the silent tug-of-war that countless women fight every day. The paradox where society tells her she can be anything, but punishes her the moment she tries to be everything. She walks into the office wearing confidence like armor. She speaks with clarity, leads with grace, and dares to aim higher. And still, there's a whisper that follows her. Too ambitious. Too aggressive. Too focused on work. If she succeeds, she's intimidating. If she slows down, she's not serious enough. If she takes charge, she's labeled bossy. If she waits patiently, she's dismissed. From a young age, she's taught to dream, but with limits, told to study hard, achieve, excel, but always with a foot on the brake, because someday she'll need to settle down. Someday she'll have to compromise. The paradox begins before she even steps into the workforce. She's asked, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" But beneath the question lingers another one, unspoken. How will this fit into your future as a woman? And when she does achieve, when she earns the promotion, becomes the leader, builds her business, she faces something far more isolating: resentment. People question how she got there. Was it merit or favor? They whisper about sacrifices she must have made. Assumptions creep in. She must not want kids. She must have no time for love. She must be cold. And if she's a mother too, the judgment only sharpens. She's asked, "Don't you feel guilty leaving your kids at home? Don't you think you're missing out?" But no one ever asks the same of a man. Her passion is seen as selfishness. Her dedication is seen as a threat. If she prioritizes her career, she's called a bad mother. If she prioritizes her children, she's called a distracted worker. There's no winning, only balancing on a knife's edge while pretending she's not bleeding. And yet, she keeps going. Because inside her lives, a version of herself the world has not yet met. A version who knows she is not defined by one role alone. She knows she can be a mother and a visionary, a wife and a warrior, a caretaker and a creator. Her ambition isn't the enemy of her femininity. It is a part of it. Still, the paradox never fully leaves. She enters rooms where decisions are made and finds herself one of the few, if not the only, woman there. She speaks with conviction, but watches her ideas get echoed louder when repeated by a man. She knows her path isn't just hers. She's clearing it for others who will follow. But even in her strength, there are moments she questions herself. Nights she lies awake asking, "Am I doing enough? Have I missed too much? Do they think I chose work over them?" And in those moments, the paradox feels like a weight too heavy to carry. She looks at the man in the same role, thriving, never questioned. No one asks him how he balances fatherhood and career. No one wonders if he's too emotional to lead. And she realizes it's not her conflict, but the world's contradiction. The world created this paradox and handed it to her to resolve. But she is not here to apologize for wanting more. She is not here to dim her light for the comfort of others. She's building something that will outlive her doubts. A legacy. She wants her daughter to grow up knowing that dreams don't have to be paused for motherhood. She wants her son to learn that strength and softness coexist in powerful women. She wants her partner to see that love grows stronger when rooted in mutual respect, not sacrifice. She isn't trying to have it all. She's trying to be all of who she is. That shouldn't be a paradox. That should be a right. The career paradox isn't just about jobs or promotions. It's about identity. It's about a woman's fight to be seen as whole, not just a nurturer, not just a professional, but both and more. She may carry the burden of expectation, but she also carries the brilliance of resilience. She is redefining what success looks like. She is teaching the world that a woman's worth is not measured by how well she fits into a box, but by how boldly she breaks out of it. This is the career paradox, and this is the woman who dares to face it every single day, not with apology, but with power. From the moment a woman finds out she's pregnant, everything changes. There's a quiet whisper, a beckoning call to a new life within her, and the world around her begins to shift. She's about to enter a paradox that's as old as time itself, the Motherhood Paradox. It's a paradox that every woman feels but rarely talks about. It's the subtle tug-of-war between what society expects her to be as a mother and who she truly is as a person. Before the child even arrives, the world begins to shape her expectations. Suddenly she's bombarded with advice, both wanted and unwanted, and a societal blueprint for what it means to be a good mother. You must be nurturing, kind, gentle. You must give everything of yourself to your child. Your life must revolve around them. This, they say, is what motherhood is. But here's the paradox. The moment she embraces this, her own identity, the woman she once was, starts to fade away. The world tells her that she must be everything for her child, but leaves little space for her to be everything for herself. And when the baby finally arrives, it's a beautiful whirlwind. There's joy, exhaustion, and something deeper, almost spiritual. Her heart grows, her patience stretches, and she discovers the depths of love she never knew existed. But as the days and months pass, something begins to settle inside her, a quiet resentment. It's not that she resents the child. How could she? The resentment lies in the suffocating weight of expectation. She's expected to be the perfect mother, always there, always giving, always sacrificing. And yet, every time she sacrifices her own desires, her own needs, she feels as if she's losing a little bit of herself. She begins to question, can I be a mother and still be me? Can I pursue my career, my dreams, and still give my child the love they deserve? Can I be both? Society often answers with a resounding no. A mother is supposed to be devoted, constantly sacrificing her time, her energy, her aspirations. But deep within her, she knows this isn't the whole truth. The truth is more complex. The truth is that she can be devoted to her child and still be devoted to herself. But this requires a delicate balance, a balancing act that leaves her exhausted and questioning, wondering if she is doing enough. The motherhood paradox is not just about how she nurtures her child, it's about how she nurtures herself. Can she still be ambitious, creative, and driven while being an amazing mother? Shouldn't these two parts of her, mother and woman, be able to coexist, even flourish together? But the world doesn't always see it that way. If she's too successful in her career, she's told she's neglecting her child. If she's too focused on her children, she's told she's wasting her potential. She can't win. Every decision she makes seems to contradict what society says she should be. And then there's the guilt. The motherhood paradox wouldn't be complete without guilt. It's like an ever-present shadow that follows her around. When she takes time for herself, she feels guilty for not being with her child. When she focuses on her work, she feels guilty for not being at home. When she has to say no to a play date, a school event, a family gathering, she feels like she's failing. The guilt piles on, suffocating her under its weight, yet she's expected to carry it with grace, to wear it like a badge of honor. But here's where the paradox really hits home, because while she may feel guilty, the reality is that she's not failing. She's thriving. The guilt comes from a narrative that says she must give up everything to be a good mother. It tells her that she must sacrifice her own happiness for the sake of her children. But that's not the full picture. The truth is that by taking care of herself, by nurturing her own dreams and ambitions, she becomes a better mother. She teaches her children the value of self-respect, the importance of boundaries, and the strength that comes from pursuing one's passions. And yet, society refuses to acknowledge this. It insists on the paradox. If you're not completely selfless, if you don't sacrifice it all, you're not doing motherhood right. But that's where the magic happens. She doesn't have to choose between being a mother and being a woman. She can be both, whole and complete. This paradox doesn't just affect mothers who work. It affects all mothers. Whether she stays at home or works outside, the pressure is the same. She is expected to embody perfection in every role. She's expected to be present at every moment, yet never be overwhelmed. She's expected to manage it all without ever breaking. But the truth is, she does break. She just does it in silence. She carries the weight of the world on her shoulders, but few ever see the cracks. And when she tries to voice this struggle, the world is quick to silence her. It's just part of motherhood, they say. It's your job. But it's more than a job. It's an identity, one that is constantly shifting and evolving. And as much as she loves her child, she cannot lose herself in the process. She cannot abandon who she is, because if she does, she will not be able to fully give what her child needs. It's a paradox of self-discovery and self-sacrifice. One does not have to come at the expense of the other. The motherhood paradox is about finding strength in vulnerability, about recognizing that it's okay to need time for yourself, to ask for help, to take breaks. It's about realizing that self-care isn't selfish, it's necessary. It's about understanding that a mother's love is not measured by how much she sacrifices, but by how much she loves herself enough to be whole. She doesn't have to sacrifice her dreams for her child, nor does she have to sacrifice her child for her dreams. In the end, the motherhood paradox is not a burden to carry, but a journey to navigate. And it's one that she will do every day with grace, with love, and with the unwavering belief that she is enough, not just as a mother, but as a woman. Assertiveness is a powerful trait, one that many women strive to embody. It's the ability to stand up for oneself, to voice one's needs, to set boundaries, and to take charge of one's life. In many ways, assertiveness is the key to success, happiness, and self-respect. But for women, asserting themselves is often easier said than done. In fact, it brings with it a paradox, one that causes confusion, frustration, and even self-doubt. It's the Assertiveness Paradox, and it lies at the intersection of power, gender expectations, and the price of being both strong and likable. The paradox begins in childhood, where girls are often taught to be kind, to be accommodating, and to keep the peace. These early lessons become ingrained in their minds, and as they grow older, they continue to operate under these social expectations. A girl is expected to be sweet, nurturing, and agreeable. She's taught that to be liked is the ultimate goal, and in turn, she may suppress her own opinions or desires to avoid conflict or alienation. As these girls become women, the same dynamics play out. The world tells women to be assertive, to take charge of their lives, to set boundaries, to stand tall in their convictions. But here's where the paradox kicks in. When a woman is assertive, she often faces backlash. She's labeled as aggressive, bossy, or too much. She's called too direct, too opinionated, too forceful. And this isn't just an external judgment, it's an internal struggle too. The very act of asserting herself can make her question whether she's doing the right thing. Am I being too demanding? Am I coming off as too harsh? Is this how women are supposed to behave? It's a constant balancing act between being true to herself and fearing the social repercussions of being too much. On the flip side, when a woman is passive, when she avoids confrontation and suppresses her voice to maintain peace, she's often dismissed, overlooked, or ignored. The same woman who once feared being too strong is now sidelined, pushed into the background. She's seen as weak, indecisive, or incapable of taking control. The paradox here is clear. A woman is either too much or not enough. There is no middle ground, no space for nuance. She is asked to be strong, but not too strong. She is asked to be assertive, but not aggressive. And no matter where she stands, she risks being criticized for the very thing society once told her to do: stand up for herself. The emotional toll of this paradox is immense. It leads to self-questioning, confusion, and a deep sense of inadequacy. A woman is caught in a loop of trying to balance assertiveness with likability, strength with warmth, power with compassion. And yet, no matter how hard she tries, she often feels as if she is failing in one way or another. When she is assertive, she fears that she might push people away. When she's passive, she fears that she's compromising her own dignity. The result is a continual, exhausting dance of trying to be both strong and likable at once, a dance that seems to have no clear rhythm or steps to follow. Think about the workplace, where the assertiveness paradox often becomes most pronounced. Women who speak up, who lead projects, or who express their opinions with confidence are often perceived as difficult. They are not seen as competent or assertive, but as challenging or confrontational. Meanwhile, men who display the same qualities are often praised for their leadership or decisiveness. Women are taught to navigate a world that rewards them for being assertive, but punishes them for being perceived as too much. It's a cruel contradiction. In the same breath, they are told that they need to be more confident, but simultaneously taught that confidence in a woman is often seen as arrogance. It's not just in the workplace, it's in every part of a woman's life. In personal relationships, women are often conditioned to prioritize the needs of others, to be patient, understanding, and selfless. Assertiveness, then, can feel like a betrayal of these expectations. To assert one's needs is to risk disappointing others, to risk being perceived as selfish or uncaring. This fear of judgment is a heavy burden, and it keeps women from asserting themselves in moments when they most need to. They are stuck in a cycle where they're constantly trying to be everything to everyone, afraid to take the space and power they deserve. But here's the most profound part of the assertiveness paradox. It's not just about how society views women, it's about how women view themselves. This paradox is rooted in a deep internal struggle. To be assertive means to step outside the bounds of what is comfortable, to challenge the norms that have been ingrained in them. It means confronting the fear that they will be rejected, criticized, or misunderstood. To assert oneself is to risk alienation, but it's also to risk empowerment. For some women, the journey to finding balance in this paradox is long and complicated. It requires self-reflection, a deep understanding of one's own needs, and the willingness to break free from societal expectations. It also requires courage to stand tall, even when it feels like the world might judge. It's about understanding that being assertive is not about dominating others or being too much. It's about claiming one's own space, one's own voice, and one's own power. The Assertiveness Paradox doesn't have to be a prison, but it is a challenge. It's a challenge that requires women to walk the fine line between strength and vulnerability, power and humility. It's a challenge that requires them to say, "I am enough, just as I am," without feeling the need to constantly prove it to anyone else. It's about learning that assertiveness is not a one-size-fits-all trait, but a fluid concept that can take on many forms. Sometimes it's quiet, sometimes it's loud, sometimes it's gentle, sometimes it's firm, but always it is rooted in authenticity, and that authenticity is where true power lies. At the end of the day, the Assertiveness Paradox is not something to be solved or fixed. It's something to be understood. It's about knowing that no matter how assertive or passive a woman may feel at times, her worth is never dependent on how others perceive her strength. Her worth lies in the truth of who she is, a woman with the right to stand tall, to speak her mind, and to take up space in a world that often tries to make her shrink. Modesty is often praised as one of the most virtuous traits a woman can possess. It's a quality that suggests humility, respect for others, and an understanding of one's place in the world. Modesty teaches women to downplay their accomplishments, to soften their presence, to speak softly, and to avoid standing too tall so as not to cast a shadow over anyone else. It's a trait that's deeply embedded in many cultures and societies, and in many ways, it's a part of what women are taught from an early age. But what happens when modesty becomes a trap? What happens when a woman is expected to be modest, yet society also demands that she stand out, be successful, and express her individuality? This is the Modesty Paradox, the conflict between the virtue of modesty and the desire for recognition, self-expression, and empowerment. From a young age, many women are conditioned to be modest, to avoid drawing attention to themselves. They are taught to keep their achievements quiet, to not boast, and to be humble in the face of success. This form of modesty is often seen as a sign of character, something that makes a woman more relatable, more approachable, and more admirable. It suggests that she understands that true value isn't found in showing off, but in quietly going about her business with grace and dignity. But as women grow older, they are also taught that in order to be successful, they must stand out. Whether in their careers, their personal lives, or their relationships, women are encouraged to be noticed, to make an impact, and to showcase their abilities. This push for self-expression, self-promotion, and achievement creates a stark contrast to the modesty they were taught to embrace. The more they try to assert themselves, the more they face a harsh judgment. When a woman is confident and proud of her accomplishments, society may label her as arrogant, conceited, or self-centered. But when she is humble, she risks being overlooked, invisible, or underestimated. This paradox is felt especially deeply in the workplace, where women are expected to assert themselves, to show initiative, and to be confident in their abilities. But when they do, they risk being criticized for being too much. A woman who is confident may be perceived as aggressive or domineering, while a man displaying the same level of confidence is often seen as a leader or a go-getter. This double standard places women in an impossible position. They must be modest, but they also need to be assertive enough to climb the career ladder, to gain recognition, and to achieve their goals. The Modesty Paradox also appears in the realm of self-expression and appearance. Women are often told to dress modestly, to keep their bodies covered, to avoid drawing attention to their physical features. Modesty is often associated with decency and respectability, but this expectation can become suffocating. It's as though women are told that they should be proud of who they are, but they must do so quietly, without standing out. They must celebrate their beauty, but only in subtle, understated ways. The irony is that while society tells women to embrace their worth, it also demands that they suppress their most visible qualities in an attempt to avoid being too much. This paradox extends beyond appearance and self-expression into the realm of relationships. Women are encouraged to be modest in their desires, in their ambitions, and in their expectations from others. They are taught that it's better to be content with what they have than to ask for more or to demand more. Modesty is seen as an expression of selflessness, of caring more for others than for oneself. But when a woman is too modest in her relationships, whether with her partner, her family, or her friends, she may find herself being taken for granted. She may lose her voice, her desires, and her identity in the process. The modesty paradox isn't just about the external pressures that women face, it's also deeply internalized. Many women struggle with feelings of guilt when they feel the urge to assert themselves, to speak their truth, or to pursue their desires. They might wonder if it's okay to stand up for what they want, or if they're being too demanding, too selfish. They might question whether it's wrong to express confidence or pride in their accomplishments. The internal conflict that arises from this paradox is immense, and it often leads to self-doubt, confusion, and a deep fear of being perceived as too much. For some women, the modesty paradox is a constant balancing act between wanting to assert their worth and not wanting to come off as arrogant or entitled. They want to be seen, to be heard, to be recognized for their talents and contributions. But they also fear the judgment that comes with being too visible. They struggle with the idea that if they are too confident, they risk being disliked, dismissed, or even criticized. For some women, the modesty paradox is a constant balancing act between wanting to assert their worth and not wanting to come off as arrogant or entitled. They want to be seen, to be heard, to be recognized for their talents and contributions, but they also fear the judgment that comes with being too visible. They struggle with the idea that if they are too confident, they risk being disliked, dismissed, or even criticized. The act of asserting themselves can feel like a betrayal of everything they've been taught about humility and modesty. But here's the crucial point. True self-worth doesn't come from suppressing one's voice, hiding one's light, or downplaying one's accomplishments. Modesty, when it becomes a mask for insecurity or fear, can hinder a woman's growth and happiness. It can prevent her from stepping into her full power and potential. On the other hand, confidence in one's abilities, achievements, and desires is not a sign of arrogance. It's a sign of self-respect and self-love. A woman doesn't have to choose between being modest and being confident. She can embrace both, finding a way to express her true self without diminishing her worth. The key to navigating the modesty paradox lies in self-awareness. It's about understanding that modesty isn't about shrinking or hiding. It's about embracing one's true nature without the need for validation from others. It's about recognizing that being proud of who you are, your accomplishments, and your desires doesn't make you arrogant. It makes you authentic. It's about knowing that it's okay to take up space in the world, to ask for what you need, and to stand firm in your own self-worth. The modesty paradox isn't something that can be easily solved or eradicated. It's a tension that exists in many women's lives, a tension between humility and self-expression, between the desire to be liked and the need to be authentic. But perhaps the most important lesson is that women can navigate this paradox on their own terms. They can find a way to honor their modesty while also embracing their power, and in doing so, they free themselves from the constraints of social expectations and step into a place of true authenticity. Aging is something that no one can escape. It is a natural process that affects every human being, but for women, aging often brings with it a complex paradox. On the one hand, there is the societal pressure to retain youth, to maintain a certain appearance, to stay beautiful and vibrant as time passes. On the other hand, there is a desire for wisdom, experience, and the acceptance of one's evolving self. The aging paradox lies in the tension between the desire to stay youthful and the acceptance of the inevitable changes that come with age. For women, youth has always been seen as a marker of beauty, desirability, and vitality. From the moment a woman enters the world, there is a societal expectation that she will grow into a young, radiant figure. She's expected to shine, to be admired for her beauty, her energy, her promise. In many cultures, a woman's value is deeply intertwined with how she looks. Her smooth skin, her vibrant hair, her youthful features. The message is clear. Youth is synonymous with worth. But as time passes, the physical changes of aging begin to appear. The first fine lines. A subtle wrinkle here, a shift in the body's contours there. With these changes comes a sense of loss. The reflection in the mirror may no longer align with the youthful image a woman once had of herself. And this can be jarring. In a world that constantly glorifies youth, the aging woman faces a dilemma. She is still the same person inside, yet the outside no longer matches the expectations. The aging paradox intensifies when society begins to overlook or even dismiss women as they grow older. In many industries, especially entertainment, fashion, and beauty, youth is prized above all else. Older women may find themselves pushed to the margins, deemed invisible or irrelevant. The beauty industry, which once celebrated their youth, now often directs its gaze to a younger generation. The message is loud and clear. Once a woman hits a certain age, her relevance diminishes, and this can lead to feelings of insecurity, isolation, and fear. But here lies the paradox. While women are told to cling to their youth, there is also a societal shift toward the appreciation of wisdom, maturity, and experience, things that only come with age. In many aspects of life, aging is seen as a sign of growth, of depth, of understanding. A woman who has lived, learned, and experienced life is seen as someone who carries wisdom, someone who can offer guidance, perspective, and emotional insight. Yet, for many women, there is still the desire to remain youthful, to look as young as they feel on the inside. This desire for youthfulness is not about vanity or superficiality. It's about wanting to be seen, to be valued, and to maintain a sense of self-worth in a society that often equates worth with appearance. The desire for youth is not simply about beauty. It is about relevance, vitality, and connection. It is about feeling alive and engaged with the world around you. The aging paradox also affects a woman's relationship with herself. As she grows older, she may begin to reflect on the passage of time, on the dreams and goals that were once so important. There may be moments of regret or longing for what could have been, or for the parts of her that have faded. She may question whether she's still attractive, still desirable, still worthy of love. The mirror becomes a battleground, one that reflects not just physical change, but also the deeper emotional struggle that accompanies the process of aging. But there is a hidden power in aging, a power that comes from the acceptance of oneself, imperfections, and all. It is a power that is often overlooked in a society that values youth above all else. Aging can bring with it a greater sense of self-awareness, self-acceptance, and inner peace. It is the wisdom that comes from years of experience, from navigating the highs and lows of life, from learning how to love and care for oneself. It is the confidence that arises from knowing who you are, what you've accomplished, and the legacy you've created. There is also the paradox of freedom that comes with aging. As a woman grows older, she may begin to care less about others' opinions, less about fitting into a specific mold. The pressure to conform to society's standards of beauty and youth can begin to fade. Instead, there is room for authenticity and self-expression, for embracing what makes her unique and valuable. Aging, in this sense, becomes a liberation, a release from the constraints that youth once imposed. Yet, in the face of these internal revelations, the external pressures remain. Women may find themselves torn between the desire to embrace their age and the desire to fight it, to push back against the inevitable changes that come with time. They may consider cosmetic procedures, use makeup to cover signs of aging, or turn to fitness regimens that promise to turn back the clock. What's crucial to recognize is that the aging paradox is not a contradiction, but a challenge. It is the tension between the societal expectations placed on women and the internal journey towards self-acceptance. Women are asked to be youthful, beautiful, and vibrant, yet they are also asked to embrace the wisdom and grace that come with age. The challenge lies in finding a balance between the two, understanding that aging does not mean a loss of value, but rather an opportunity for growth, self-expression, and deeper connection with oneself and others. Ultimately, the aging paradox teaches us that aging is not a loss. It is a process of transformation. It is about learning to embrace the changes, both physical and emotional, that come with the passage of time. It is about finding beauty in the lines that tell the story of a life lived, in the wisdom that only experience can bring, and in the self-confidence that comes with knowing that true worth is not found in the mirror, but in the soul. The aging paradox, while difficult and often painful to navigate, holds the key to deeper wisdom, understanding, and freedom. Women, like everyone, deserve to be seen for who they truly are. not just for their appearance, but for the incredible depth and strength they carry within themselves. The aging process, while fraught with challenges, also offers the opportunity to rediscover one's true essence, to embrace the beauty of life in all its phases, and to fully experience the freedom that comes with living authentically. There's a quiet battle many women face, a battle that doesn't show up in conversations, photos, or smiles, but exists deeply within. It's the need to be perfect, the relentless, invisible pressure to have it all figured out, to excel in every role, to always say the right thing, do the right thing, and never, ever fall apart. This is the perfectionism paradox, the painful contradiction where striving to be flawless often leads not to happiness, but to exhaustion, anxiety, and emotional disconnection. Perfectionism, on the surface, seems like a strength. After all, what's wrong with high standards, with wanting to be better, to succeed, to give your best? But for many women, perfectionism isn't just about striving, it's about surviving. It's a learned armor. Society has conditioned women to believe that to be accepted, they must be exceptional. Not just good at one thing, good at everything. Be a nurturing mother, a supportive partner, a successful professional, a flawless friend, and look beautiful while doing it all. The paradox lies in the fact that even when they meet these impossible standards, the feeling of enough never comes. A woman may wake up every day and put on her best face, her best smile, best outfit, best performance. She might be running the house, raising children, handling a demanding job, managing emotional labor, keeping up appearances, and still feel like she's falling short. Because perfectionism doesn't reward effort. It raises the bar every time you get close to it. And every mistake, every moment of vulnerability, every crack in the facade becomes a silent accusation. You're not enough. The perfectionism paradox is intensified by modern culture. Social media has become a stage where curated lives are displayed like works of art. Perfect meals, perfect bodies, perfect relationships, perfect moments. But behind the filters and smiles often lie tears, breakdowns, sleepless nights, and silent self-doubt. And still, women scroll and compare, wondering why their life doesn't look as perfect, why they aren't as happy, as beautiful, as together as everyone else seems to be. This paradox is especially brutal for women who are naturally high achievers, those who want to make their mark, to leave a legacy, to do something meaningful. The drive to succeed can morph into a prison of self-criticism. A woman might achieve her goals, degrees, promotions, praise, but still lie awake at night feeling like a fraud. She'll remember the one thing she got wrong, not the 100 things she did right. She'll downplay compliments, deflect recognition, and overanalyze every minor failure. Because in her mind, success without perfection is not success at all. And yet, here's the cruel irony. The more women strive for perfection, the more disconnected they often feel from themselves and from others. Perfectionism doesn't allow room for vulnerability. And without vulnerability, there's no real intimacy, no real joy. You can't laugh freely when you're scared of looking foolish. You can't cry openly when you're scared of looking weak. You can't connect deeply when you're too busy maintaining an image. Perfectionism builds walls, not bridges. There are women walking around today who are deeply lonely, not because they are unloved, but because they've never allowed anyone to see their imperfect selves. They wear strength like armor and accomplishment like a mask. But deep down, they are tired. Tired of trying so hard. Tired of feeling like they're one mistake away from being unworthy. Real-life stories of this paradox are everywhere. The successful executive who feels like she's failing as a mother. The stay-at-home mom who feels guilty for not contributing financially, despite pouring her soul into her family. The young woman who gets perfect grades but is crippled by anxiety. The elderly woman who spent decades pleasing everyone and now looks back wondering why she never felt free. And yet, when women do break through the illusion of perfection, when they allow themselves to be human, to be real, something incredible happens. They find connection. They discover strength, not in flawlessness, but in authenticity. They realize that the most magnetic women are not the ones who appear perfect, but the ones who are brave enough to be honest. Perfection is a moving target. It changes with trends, with opinions, with time. What never changes is the power of showing up as you are. The irony is that the very thing women think they need to hide, imperfection, is often what makes them most beautiful, most relatable, most loved. The perfectionism paradox doesn't mean giving up on excellence. It means redefining it. Excellence is not about being without flaw. It's about effort, passion, resilience, and growth. It's about showing up again and again, even when you're scared, even when you fail, even when you feel like you're not enough. If you've ever felt crushed under the weight of your own expectations, if you've ever felt like you had to hold everything together while quietly falling apart inside, know that you are not alone. Millions of women walk the same tightrope every day, but the truth is, you don't have to be perfect to be loved, to be respected, to be whole. You just have to be real. Letting go of perfection doesn't mean lowering your standards. It means releasing the need to prove your worth through achievement. It means understanding that your value isn't measured by productivity, appearance, or praise, but by your courage to be authentically you. The most powerful women are not the ones who hide their flaws. They are the ones who own them, grow from them, and use them to light the way for others. There is a silent battle many women fight every single day, a war that no one sees, yet one that defines how she moves through the world. It's the self-worth paradox, the painful contradiction where a woman may be incredibly capable, kind, accomplished, and strong, yet still doubt her own worth at the core. She can hold everything together for others, be the anchor in her family, the leader at work, the emotional support for her friends, and still look in the mirror and silently ask herself, "Am I enough?" This paradox doesn't begin in adulthood. It often starts in childhood, in subtle ways. When little girls are praised more for being pretty than for being brave, when they're rewarded for being agreeable rather than assertive, when they learn that pleasing others earns love, and speaking up might risk rejection, slowly their self-worth becomes entangled with how others perceive them. They learn to measure their value not from the inside, but through the outside world, through validation, attention, achievement, or appearance. As they grow older, this belief deepens. A woman may chase success not because she craves power, but because deep down she believes her worth must be earned, that she must do more, give more, fix more to deserve love. She may stay in relationships that drain her because she fears that no one else will choose her. She might pour herself into her work, her children, her responsibilities, yet lie awake at night wondering if any of it really matters. This is the cruel nature of the paradox. The more she tries to prove her worth, the more distant she feels from it. It manifests in the small moments. When she says yes, when she wants to say no, when she apologizes for things that aren't her fault, when she smiles through pain just to make others comfortable. It's in the way she downplays her achievements, in the way she shies away from compliments, in how she second-guesses her choices, her words, her body, her very being. And it's not because she's weak. It's because for so long, her self-worth was made conditional, on performance, on perfection, on people's opinions. And that's the heart of this paradox. Self-worth, by its very name, should come from within. Yet, for so many women, it's shaped by everything outside of them. Relationships, rejections, roles, expectations, appearances. Society teaches them that their value depends on how desirable they are, how nurturing they are, how put together they appear. Rarely does it teach them that they are inherently worthy, just for being. Take the woman who gives endlessly in her marriage, raising children, supporting her partner's dreams, sacrificing her own. Yet, when she's finally alone, she wonders who she even is without someone else to serve. Take the high-powered executive who commands a room, but crumbles in private because one failure makes her feel like a fraud. Take the girl who gets straight A's, keeps everyone happy, looks perfect, and yet feels like she's only as good as her next achievement. These women aren't rare. They are everywhere. They walk past you every day, smiling. You'd never know they question their worth because they've been taught to hide it well. And here lies the emotional intensity of the self-worth paradox. It's invisible. These women function. They show up. They love fiercely. But they live with a gnawing, quiet doubt. The voice in their head that whispers, "You're not doing enough. You're not beautiful enough. You're not smart enough. You're not lovable." And even when others admire them, they struggle to believe it. But here's the truth. Self-worth is not something to be earned. It is something to be remembered. It is the truth we are born with, but often forget. It's the unshakable knowing that you are valuable, not because of what you do, but because of who you are, that you are allowed to take up space, to have needs, to make mistakes, to be soft and strong, to speak and be silent, to be whole and messy, and still deserving of love. Healing this paradox doesn't come from perfection. It comes from presence, from pausing long enough to ask, who am I when I'm not performing? It comes from allowing yourself to rest without guilt, to say no without fear, to set boundaries not because you're selfish, but because you're sacred. It comes from unlearning the lies you were told about your worth and replacing them with truth. You don't have to earn love. You are love. You don't have to be perfect. You are enough. The journey back to self-worth is not a straight line. It's a process of peeling back years of conditioning, of standing in front of the mirror and deciding that today you will not be at war with yourself. That today you will see your reflection not as a list of flaws, but as a survivor, a fighter, a soul that has kept going despite everything. There is unimaginable strength in the woman who finally says, I am enough, just as I am. She becomes unstoppable, not because she has no fear, but because she no longer lets fear define her worth. She becomes free, not because life is easy, but because her value is no longer chained to approval. That's not weakness, that's power. And that is how the self-worth paradox begins to unravel, not through external validation, but through the quiet daily act of reclaiming yourself. One decision at a time, one boundary at a time, one truth at a time. You are not too much, you are not too little. You are not broken. You are becoming. And the world needs more women who finally believe it. She longs for freedom, not just the kind that lets her walk where she wants or speak what's on her mind, but the deeper kind. The freedom to live as her truest self, to dream without judgment, to love without fear, to say yes because she wants to, and no because she chooses to. And yet, when that freedom is finally within reach, something strange happens. She hesitates. She questions. She wonders if she even deserves it. This is the freedom paradox, the contradiction where a woman craves liberation, but when it's offered, she often feels anxious, guilty, or unsure of how to claim it. From a young age, girls are taught to be careful, to not be too loud, to not take up too much space, to be considerate, polite, likable, to follow rules and meet expectations. And while boys are often told to explore, conquer, and challenge boundaries, girls are trained to respect them. Even in the most supportive homes, this message sneaks in, through media, through school, through cultural norms. And over time, she starts to believe that true freedom might not be meant for her, that there will always be a cost, that too much freedom could make her dangerous, selfish, or, worst of all, unlovable. And so, she grows up with a hunger she's afraid to name. She fantasizes about what it would feel like to choose her own path, to make bold decisions without needing permission, to walk away from roles that no longer serve her. But each time she tries, something holds her back. It's not always external pressure. Often, it's internal. A voice that says, don't rock the boat, don't disappoint them, don't be too much. It's not that she doesn't want freedom. She just doesn't know if she's allowed to want it out loud. Look at the woman in a corporate job, brilliant and efficient, yet secretly yearning to quit and pursue a passion that's been calling her for years. But she's been told that stability is everything, that chasing dreams is irresponsible, especially for someone with a family. So she silences that dream. Or the woman in a relationship who wants space, time to breathe, grow, rediscover herself. But she fears being labeled distant, difficult, or disloyal. So she stays close, available, emotionally present even when her own cup is empty. This is what the freedom paradox does. It convinces her that freedom is dangerous, that wanting more means she's ungrateful, that breaking out of a role means she's broken the trust of others. She carries the invisible burden of being everything for everyone, and in doing so, forgets how to be anything for herself. And when she finally dares to break free, to make choices that reflect her truth, she may be met not with celebration, but with criticism. You've changed. You used to be so nice. You're not thinking about others. And even if no one says it aloud, the fear of being misunderstood, judged, or left behind is enough to make her shrink back, to choose safety over freedom. But what if the very thing she fears is what she needs most? True freedom doesn't come from escaping responsibility. It comes from aligning responsibility with authenticity. It's not selfish to want a life that reflects who you are. It's sacred. And yet, for many women, the path to that life feels like walking a tightrope between obligation and desire. Here's the truth that many women are slowly beginning to remember. You are allowed to want more. You are allowed to evolve, to change your mind, to walk away from what no longer fits. Freedom is not the absence of love, duty, or structure. It's the presence of choice, the ability to say, this is who I am, and this is how I choose to live. And yes, it's terrifying, because freedom also means owning your decisions, facing discomfort, risking rejection. It means letting go of the roles that kept you safe but small. It means being okay with the fact that not everyone will understand or support you. And it means confronting the parts of yourself that have stayed quiet for far too long. But with that fear comes power. The woman who steps into her freedom doesn't become reckless. She becomes radiant. She stops apologizing for existing. She sets boundaries, not to push people away, but to protect her soul. She learns that her worth is not tied to how much she sacrifices, how little she needs, or how well she fits into someone else's idea of who she should be. She learns that freedom is not something given, it's something claimed. And yes, there will be days when she doubts herself, when the voices of the past feel louder than the truth she's building. But with each decision rooted in self-trust, she begins to rise. She begins to feel the weight of old expectations lift. She begins to live, not just survive. The freedom paradox dissolves the moment a woman realizes that her life is hers to shape, that choosing herself is not betrayal, it's belonging, that she doesn't need permission to be free, just the courage to remember she already is. She lives in a world of contradiction, a world that tells her to be soft but not too soft, strong but not intimidating, nurturing but not dependent, independent but not so much that it threatens. She is expected to embody the perfect balance between feminine grace and masculine drive. And yet, no one shows her what that balance looks like. No one tells her how to be both powerful and tender without being punished for one or the other. This is the feminine-masculine balance paradox. The psychological tightrope women walk between embodying strength and softness, leadership and receptivity, independence and emotional connection. Society praises the empowered woman, but only if her power doesn't challenge the comfort of others. A woman who speaks boldly may be seen as aggressive. A woman who cries openly may be seen as unstable. A woman who leads with authority may be labeled cold. But a woman who stays quiet, who nurtures endlessly, who supports everyone but herself, she is considered virtuous. Even in modern times, the remnants of ancient gender programming still whisper in her ears, be pleasing, be gentle, be nice. But also, be ambitious, be confident, make your own money, chase your dreams. This conflicting narrative creates a psychological battlefield within her. No matter what she chooses, she's wrong in someone's eyes, and often in her own. She wakes up with goals, determination burning inside her. She wants to build, to create, to lead. She channels her masculine energy, the part of her that pushes forward, competes, calculates, plans. But by midday, she is told to soften, to stop being too much, to smile more, to listen instead of speak. And when she returns home, the switch must flip again. She's expected to embody femininity, to nurture, to flow, to yield. She doesn't know where one role ends and the other begins. And worse, she doesn't know who she really is beneath all these shifting masks.